All right, welcome to the Sae Bae cast number 243 with ScreteMonge, or Gnome, as I'll call you. I believe you go by Gnome, is that correct?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
How are you doing, Gnome?
I'm not doing too bad. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good. I'm very excited. Again, another episode that's been in the works. I feel like a long time coming.
2 years.
Yeah, just a couple of years, no biggie. Time really does fly, though.
I know, it's crazy. I was just looking back through my Twitter, just some of the things I'd posted over the past couple of years since we first talked about, doing this. I just thought like, man, so much has happened in this game in just a 2 year span. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, no, I mean it's the game is it feels like it's sort of pedal to the metal. It seems like the game's very much progressing in a lot of ways, in a lot of cool ways. Some concerning ways. I feel like I've talked with guests, that have their view of the game of how they would like it,
Yeah.
and it might be, diverging from that. But ultimately, I really do feel. I want to ask you, I guess, first broad question. We're going to get into introductions of obviously who you are, and we have a huge list of things to go over. So this is going to be a beefy cast, I'm sure. But what are your thoughts on this being the golden age of OSRS?
Oh gosh, that is such a hard thing to say because I know you started what, 2015,
Yeah,
16?
no, you got it. 2015 September.
2015. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started right at the beginning. I've been playing old school RuneScape since 2006, and I jumped on old school pretty much as soon as it came out. And it's to call it a golden age right now. I think if you were to look at our player count, I think there's so many different metrics by which you could call something a golden age. I think if you're to take it just by player count, then absolutely, like we are absolutely smashing our player count every year. I think if you're to talk about different types of content, then it really depends on who you're talking to. I mean, I'm sure that if you're to talk to PVMers, they would say, 2018 when TOB was released. Pretty sure that's the year.
Hmm.
They would call that the golden age. I think overall we're doing quite well. The player base is generally happy. There's a certain level of unprecedented trust in Jagex to just do their job and do their thing, and I think that also speaks to us being in a fairly safe position as well. And altogether, I mean, I think players are just generally happy with what's gone down in old school so far. Although I know you'll get your vocal few here and there who'll disagree with me there.
Yeah, and I think what's really important is to just recognize just the game's plurality. It's like there's so many people to cater to. You can't
Yes.
expect this game to be completely what you want it to be. You have to
Yeah.
let go. You have to accept that the game will transform, and there's things that I know firsthand. There's things that I'm upset about with the game's direction in
Oh,
certain
me too.
little areas, but ultimately when you see the full broad thing, and then you also let go of some of your own sort of biases, it's just like, okay, you know what, this game is actually going pretty well, and I'm excited to log in most days to just play the
Yeah.
game.
I think that's a really good point that you make, that I can make endless complaints about this game, which is a game that I love a lot. And I'm generally quite happy with the direction we've taken. But at the end of the day, I can still log in every day and say, yeah, I'm having a good time. I'm really enjoying this. I'm enjoying it probably just as much as I always have.
Yeah, that I think the only real, I don't know, thing I will never lighten up on, and I'm glad they've never gone down this path, is the introduction of microtransactions.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Like full stop, that is not a route I would ever want to go down, and that would change it. It wouldn't be like, oh, some people like this. No, I would have a serious problem with that, and I would not shut up about it, ever. So
Yeah, yeah, and you know what? Now that we're already walking down this path,
yeah.
I think it's so fascinating, just kind of the history of microtransactions with RuneScape. Because if you, yeah, I know that you took a break before you came back for old school for quite a few years. But if you look back at the history of RuneScape and microtransactions, I remember my first concerns appearing around the release of the loyalty program, in RuneScape. It was RuneScape 2 at the time. This is what would have been like 2009, 2011, where it was pretty much the more for every month that you have membership, you get these points which you can spend on these auras, which are this extra slot in your equipment, like a special little slot of its own, that can give you. At first, it was quite minor buffs, and since then has grown a lot. Since then, grew a lot. I don't know what it's like now. They might not even have a loyalty program at this point. I don't know. But I remember that point being the first thing that kind of clued me in to saying like, and do not like that. And the thing is, you got extra points for the more consecutive months. So if you had 12 months in a row of membership, you would just be loaded up with these different points to spend on these auras, which would give you these different power boosts. And I remember looking at that and thinking like, this is something that feels really uncomfortable to me. And then of course it further went down this path of, Squeal of Fortune in 2012. And for me, that was a big breaking point along with the evolution of content. Evolution of combat.
Content is one word for it.
Yeah. Those were the two things that were like, I can't be around here anymore. And the funny thing about microtransactions is that we do have them to some degree in old school. We have bonds, right? And if you look back in, was this 2014? I want to say 2015, with the release of free-to-play. Bonds were packaged with free-to-play. Now, as much as I love mod Matt K, ex-mod Matt K, please don't send him like customer service requests anymore. He hasn't been around for 6 years. When he initially pitched the idea of free-to-play, everyone knew that was the thing that at the time would really bring old school to the next level, because we had just been through the dredges of 2014, late 2013, where there is this absolute dearth of content. Like there's nothing going on. The player base was slowly declining. Like at our lowest, we were probably getting about 10K players online at peak, which is obviously not too great. And everyone felt that free-to-play was something that had to come in to try and buff up those numbers and encourage people to come into the game, to try the game out, to eventually get membership. And bonds were packaged as this deal that was offered by the old school team. I want to find the graph that Mod Matt K pitched to players. Let's see if I can find it. Pretty much, he said that he created this weird graph that was, it didn't even have axes on it. It was just like players and a line which showed players would go up if free to play and bonds came into old school. It was like this. It was this statistical nightmare. But in any case, they pretty much said we can't have free to play unless we have bonds as well. And players voted it in. Now, I think there's a lot of nuances to bonds, because as far as microtransactions go, they are probably the best. Like the best for every party. Jagex gets to make a bit of money. The player selling it in game gets to make a bit of GP, and the player on the receiving end gets some membership. Now, I do think it comes at some cost of game integrity. I do think that's it's not like integrity isn't like an all or none sort of thing, but it certainly knocks it down a couple points being able to buy yourself power. Now, there's a lot of other aspects of old school that can't be bought or require the grind. Like your XP still for the most part requires a fairly significant grind, but that was one of those things that was like, I don't know how I felt about it at the time, and I still don't know how I feel about it now. And then, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm loving this actually. I guess I'll just interrupt briefly and just say, I think I agree on your point of I can't even imagine a better microtransaction system.
No,
I mean, microtransactions across the board, I've never been a fan of. I think the caveat I've always had is Iron Man mode. Iron Man mode has never been able to benefit from Bonds.
Yes.
And I think that's why I've always been way more prone to that game mode. I'm definitely like Iron Man pilled in this game, and I always have been, and I'm pretty sure I always will be. Just because it does feel more pure. It doesn't feel like there is an advantage to take. However, there always has been those little sneaky advantages where you could use like mains and stuff or alting and stuff. But like that is very, it's not even on the same level. And then the other thing.
Stopping that stuff is hard. Stopping that. It's just really difficult.
Yeah, and they've made good strides toward it. I mean, then again, we could just go down this conversation of how I see game integrity in general in the Iron Man mode and how it used to be versus now. But that's a whole nother like just can of worms.
Maybe we'll come around to that. Yeah, that is a can of worms.
I think we will. So let me have you finish your point on Bonds, and then we got to get that introduction, because I feel like some people are like, who is this man? Like, who? Right.
Okay. So I kind of just launched right into like a microtransaction tirade. But hi, I'm Gnome, also known as ScreteMonge, which is an anagram for secret gnome. I've been playing this game since 2006. As I mentioned, I played pretty much right into the release of Old School, and I've been playing since. What do I do? Why am I here? That's a great question. At this point, I don't even know what I am. I don't even know what I consider myself to be. I'm not really a content creator. In the past, more in the past than nowadays at least, I used to do I used to pitch a lot of game suggestions. And like make like really fancy posts and post them to Reddit and Twitter and all that. And it eventually evolved to I was doing some Blender art. Eventually evolved to where I started doing a ton of Runelight development. I've got a couple of plugins underneath my belt, as well as I do various things for Jagex here and there. I was part of their early what do you call it? Early information videos for sailing. I did a lot of those at the time. I've been ingrained into many different conversations with mods about game development and the different going-ons around the game. And right now, probably what I do most is I continue work with my Creators Kit plugin, which is a tool to help content creators. So that's a summary of me. Yeah, just to finish my quick microtransaction history recap. You were there. You would have been there when the partnership survey came out, or partnerships poll it was. Yeah. Mm-hmm. What did you think of that? It was just cosmetics, and it was just for a limited time. What was your take then, and what's your take now?
I think my take generally is I don't like advertisements in games. Especially when they're very explicit, just like, okay, like this is really just an advertisement, where, I guess they can kind of camouflage it. One of those could be like POH stuff, or maybe override on one of your swords. So it's like an ornament kit or something like that. That would just feel like, okay, it's exclusive. Everybody technically can have it if you are willing to pay some real money to these, other companies. And it was very minimal, but a lot of people's fear, and myself included, was that this is a snowball that can build quite big if we just give a little bit of ground right now. Who knows how much it can take? And for sure, we're probably not going to get many more polls after this. If we're all cool with this, I don't think they're going to, do their due diligence and be like, oh, what about this? What about this? They're just gonna be like, oh, well, they were already cool with it, so we can just kind of do whatever. And I just think it just felt odd, and it didn't hurt game integrity. It's just the aesthetics of the game are now going to be tainted, in my opinion. Yeah. No, I pretty much 100% agree with what you just said there. A couple things that I would like to tack on. Yeah, obviously it felt like a bit of a foot in the door moment, where if they can catch you on this thing, they can catch you on the next microtransaction as well. And again, it was a relatively light proposition. You were able to access these cosmetics for a certain number of days before just be available to the general audience. But I think that, and I know that a lot of games do very successfully by selling cosmetics and providing instead like entirely free-to-play experience with paid cosmetics. And I think that is generally it's a generally good model, but I don't think it's a good model for RuneScape.
And one of the big reasons is because cosmetics are inherently tied to your progression of your account in this game. If you have a fancy looking cosmetic, it is generally because you earned it, or your more powerful items, your more powerful equipment looks better, it looks fancier, it has more detail. I don't think that cosmetics in this game are absolutely arbitrary. I don't think you can just sell them in a shop and for it to feel the same. If you look at RuneScape 3, they sell tons of cosmetics, and some of those paid cosmetics are the best looking in the game. And it sucks that when you look at that person, you have to understand these two conflicting ideas of this looks amazing, but this item is meaningless. The other thing that it does is that it ties the company to a couple different problems. One is that those items could just be released in game, just as a normal part of your gameplay. There was a Prif POH cosmetic, like it would turn. The proposition was it would turn your POH into like an elf themed place. But the question then becomes, wait a second, why don't I just get that for completing Song of the Elves? Why is that not a part of my progression, my gameplay? Why is that not something to strive for? Because that sounds awesome. Why is it instead tied to my real life ability to play the ability to pay for it? The other problem is that it changes the way that the company approaches cosmetics. Instead of offering the best cosmetics through gameplay, they are incentivized to offer the best cosmetics through microtransactions. So, I know that you were a big fan of Oathplate armor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, what if instead they were to sell Oathplate 2 that looks exactly like Oathplate? Who would buy it? I mean, I'm sure many people would, right? It's arguably, very debatably, a good-looking armor set. But then they're incentivized to make the real Oathplate look worse. Instead, your real Oathplate might instead have turned out to look like steel armor, because, well, they want you to buy the ornament kit that buffs it into the current Oathplate, or they want you to buy the Oathplate, let's call it the Oathbreaker's armor, which just looks way better than the real Oathplate. So it just changes the relationship between the quality of the product that the company provides and how you access it. And that always makes me uncomfortable.
That's actually a great point to bring up is it's easy to think, oh, well, it's just a cosmetic, but now there's a monetary incentive to really pimp out this cosmetic.
Yeah.
And I know the old school player base, what would happen initially if they started introducing these sort of pay to win cosmetics, I guess pay to win probably not the right word, but just, having to do things outside of the game in order to get these, everybody's going to jump on this bandwagon. Okay, if you look like this, we are all going to flame you for being a credit card warrior. And so what they would inevitably need to do is really make it look special, like to the point where, you probably have to tone back what's actually in the game originally just to make something look so spectacular. And that
exactly.
would cause some really weird incentives that are just completely opposite. And oh man, that would be a bad route to go down.
Yeah, and when you say tone back, it's not like they would take the live Oathplate armor and make it look worse. They would just never release a great looking Oathplate set because they're incentivized to make the great looking set a paid cosmetic. So that's always a fear of mine when touching cosmetics in a game like this where progression is really meaningful. It makes a lot more sense for a game like League of Legends, where there's not really progression. It doesn't really matter. The progression you get is like your elo, I suppose, for playing rank. The other thing is that players are not great at. Players will prioritize looking good over looking like they fit in, like they're immersive. And what I mean by that is if you look at a game like Fortnite, they sell all these crazy, ridiculous skins of all these different franchises because they sell. And now if you really cared about the aesthetic of Fortnite, which I don't think many people do, mind you, but you would be shocked to play the game thinking you're stepping into like this battle royale, everyone's, this military guy running around with a gun, and instead find Darth Vader and people in green suits and all that sort of weird stuff. Like, people are incentivized to look crazy because
Yeah.
it gives them attention. And I think if you were to sell a skin in old school that turns your character 100% green, I think it would sell incredibly well. And I think people would be wearing it because people care. Again, people care more about standing out than they do about fitting into the game, about looking immersive, I suppose.
Yeah, that's a great point. Actually, and so I think we can both agree then that any of those partnerships really aren't a good thing. But here's the question I have, because this was one of the arguments that would come up, is if they are able to introduce these partnerships, what if in turn that meant lowering or completely, kind of capping the membership prices for a set amount of time? So it's like, hey, we're going to introduce these partnerships, and part of this deal that we're going to make with you guys, the player base, is that we're not going to increase membership prices for the next 5-6 years or something like that. What if they were to do something like that, where now it really is something like, okay, this is kind of a deal we're making where, okay, we can accept this and we're going to get a benefit of membership prices not increasing, or potentially, I doubt they would ever do this, but even potentially lowering costs, so you could.
Yeah.
Now, what is your stance on something like that?
So I think that's really interesting because I think that in a way reflects bonds, right? The deal with bonds is that, well, there's some cost to game integrity, except people get free membership and Jagex gets more money. In general, with regards to that exact idea, I would say that I don't, I don't inherently like dislike it if Jagex were able to create a real commitment that actually mattered. But the thing is that even if they would commit to something like a year or 2 years of not increasing your membership price or even lowering your membership price, then they've got the foot in the door with these cosmetics that in 3 years' time, they're going to increase the membership probably twice as much as they would have done otherwise, and you get paid cosmetics now. It's kind of like, I don't, I'm always cautious about being buttered up in a way and having these things sort of slip in, uh, which we eventually kind of get to see with the microtransaction survey that came out a couple months ago. It's yeah, no, to that exact idea. If I had some sort of guarantee that Jagex would hold to their promise and we would kind of reset back to our baseline at the end, then I would be more willing to accept it. But that requires a lot of faith that Jagex doesn't want money, and I don't really have that kind of faith.
Yeah, that would be a really that is the definition of just faith. It's just nope. We need actual trust, and yeah, I don't think anybody would be able to trust Jagex on that front. I guess it's more of a hypothetical, because that was something that would come up, and I think that's even what Jagex was kind of saying, like, hey, this is going to help us potentially, add more content to the game, because now we're going to have an additional, flow of revenue. And
Yeah. So that is just to quickly kind of go on that point. That is the thing that they have been selling microtransactions to RuneScape 3 players on for a decade now, is the idea that, well, hey, we provide you with more content because you guys pay us. But I think if you were to take the scale of revenue that they generate from microtransactions relative to the amount and quality of content they get, I think you would probably find a significant mismatch. They make a ridiculous amount of money off microtransactions. And what is the promise that they can give you that would convince you to think that they are actually putting all that money back into the game? It's the problem with a promise like that is that Jagex has no one to hold them accountable to that promise except the community. And it can be really hard to galvanize the community to react against that. If you were to walk into the RuneScape 3 subreddit right now and shout out to the world, Jagex promised us more and better quality content for more microtransactions, and I do not believe we are there yet. I don't think anyone would pay you attention. I think it's just so hard to get people together unless there's some sort of new inciting event to really galvanize them again.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think most of us are not under the illusion that, they wouldn't be just really pocketing a lot of the money. I think that's just goes hand in hand with the business model of just like, okay, well, we will produce a little bit better stuff, but who's holding us really accountable to put as many or as much resources into this as possible. So I think we both agree. I think vast majority of the community agree that microtransactions in old school. I mean, we have something so good right now. We have a whole list of things to get through, but I want to actually just bring up one more point, which is Project Xaneris being indefinitely canceled or paused. Which to me, and I want to obviously get your take on this. To me, I think it was a good decision because one, I think there's just so much coming out by the end of this year. Sailing obviously as the big one, and dropping something as massive as Project Xaneris with Sailing just feels like, okay, this is way too much, and it feels like Project Xaneris can really be something that can come in the future. There's no real rush for it. I definitely understand the massive potential for it, but you need to really take care of something like this and to really put a lot of energy into it. And I feel like because we're in a golden age, why take any risk like this? You know what I mean? So let's hear your thoughts though.
Yeah, so Project Xaneris is something I was very excited about, and I'm very sorry to hear that it's been canceled. At the same time, I am understanding of the reasons why they would do it. When I was initially sold on Project Xaneris, the idea that really inspired me was the offering that you would be able to program essentially in either RuneScript or a RuneScript-like language, and essentially be able to create your entire own game. Now that, as far as I know, until the end, that was still the promise of the future. Eventually, that you'd be able to actually program in Project Xaneris. But that wasn't really the focus that they came out with. All the talk that they would provide would be about like all the different toggles that you can do to enable leagues like modifiers. And that was, I think, to myself and most other people, the least interesting part. The problem with programming is that to create a language that could be understood by the specific RuneScape community, I think is just an incredible amount of work. And I think that's probably the point. I think that was probably the decision that determined the fate of Project Xaneris. What I suspect happened behind the scenes is that they weren't seeing quite enough excitement about the sort of toggle leagues like, drop downs of different modifiers that you can choose. I'm guessing that they didn't quite see the excitement for that they were hoping. And then they probably looked towards the programming side of it and said, this is such a ridiculous amount of work and such a crazy budget to pull off that we're still going to be talking about this in 10 years. I suspect that was probably those two things were the decision makers on canceling Project Xaneris. So as much as I'm really sad to see it go, because I think that we have an extraordinary community who is incredibly creative and incredibly dedicated and would do amazing things if given the tools to be able to create their own experiences. As much as I'm sad to see that that's not going to happen, I can understand I understand what I believe to be the reasons for canceling the project. And I'm like, I get it. I don't really blame you for that.
What are your thoughts on, let's just imagine it was to come out. Did you have any concerns with it diversifying the player base as like in a negative
Yeah,
way, kind of
great
segregating people
question.
into their own communities?
Yeah, so I think to some degree, I mean, yes, it would segregate the community at least a tiny bit. Now, would it? How many players would it introduce? It could introduce a million players to the game, depending on how good the tools are and how well the community uses it. The other thing is that old school is it's a very storied game. We've been playing the quote unquote vanilla version for, if you consider 2013 the start, 12 years. People have an idea of the experience they want when they come to old school. I don't think that the game would have died by any means because most players who would come to old school would probably be here for the old school experience. But I do understand, of course, that there's going to be at least some people who leave old school and go to these different Project Xanaris servers. But the thing to me is that more and more, I've felt that there's this diverging of different communities in completely different directions of what they want from this game, such that it's become really difficult, as you mentioned earlier, to satisfy every community. And part of the appeal of Project Xanaris to me was that people would be able to decide the old school experience that they really wanted. You know, it's really sad to hear about players who, really wanted the 2013 version of old school and who are, really disheartened by the fact that this game is not that anymore. But with Project Xanaris, they would potentially have that thing again. And so for me, yes, you would split the player base to some degree. But if you're splitting it and everyone's happy with where they end up, I don't I'm not worried about that. I'm happy that people are getting the experiences that they're paying the company for.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. And I think one of the most exciting parts about Project Xanaris is, yeah, there could be some segregation and some players really just get locked into these other, YouTubers worlds and stuff and other content creators that they love and just hop into their worlds. But I feel like there would be this almost inevitable return to the main game. And one of the best
Yes.
parts of creators having control and power to make content, like, and again, this would be
Oh
much
man.
more down the line, is, I mean, just look at Varlamore. This is Gentle Tractor's dream that in real life now. I mean, we have Varlamore in the game, and I've seen so many creators designing maps of just
Yeah.
beautiful areas and islands and things like that. And imagine the power to create a boss that is, just something that's so addicting, so fun. And now you can genuinely just, I don't know how it would work if
Mhm.
Jagex already owns the rights and they can just sort of take whatever they want from anybody's stuff. I'd imagine maybe there'd be some sort of payment to the guy that made it or however that would work. But imagine bringing the best of the best content that other people have made into the main game and getting to pick
Yeah.
and choose. And you're just going to have this huge like just so many options of just picking the best stuff and putting it into the game rather than what we've seen. And again, I guess this is like a really bad example, but like 2013, it's like, okay, we have a player design content, we get rooftops, it's like, I mean, obviously
Yeah.
back then we didn't have many devs to work on things, but like imagine that on steroids where, okay, now we're actually going to pick and choose the best of the best things that
Yeah.
have already been tried and true. We don't have to experiment by putting them in the game and just hoping. It's like it's already
Yeah.
proven.
The flow of ideas would be incredible because I think again, we have an incredibly creative and talented community and in a way almost weaponizing them to be able to crowdsource different ideas and not just ideas on paper but ideas in reality and being able to pick what pieces of those ideas are great and implement it into the game or to be a little more topical to take Yama and change around the mechanics a little, give you a chance to be like, hey, Jagex, this isn't working, here's an example of it working. And I think that would have been incredible. But again, like the jump to get to that point where Project Xanaris would be that good to be able to do that, I suspect that's where the project got really caught up
Yeah.
and they realized there wasn't a way forward.
Yeah, and it feels like no matter what, there will be a progression. So at some point, Project Xaneris will have to be released somewhat bare bones. Like it's just kind of the inevitable, and then it builds on that. And so, I think some of the disappointment, I imagine, can be, well, let's release it as early as possible. It doesn't matter if it's that popular, but we can then build on it rather than waiting several more years, and we're still going to be at the same point where we still have to build on this.
Yeah, no, that was the proposition that they made. But I think that first part just didn't really quite grab players enough to be able to
Yeah,
justify it. Which is again, it's just part of the nature of the scope of the project being so large, I think.
totally. Okay, let's switch gears and get into this creator's kit. So, and you will have some visuals here and there. So you just let me know
Yeah.
when you have any visuals for any of these topics we're going to go down. But give me the brief overview of what creator's kit is and your, I guess role in how you are using this. And let's hear it.
Yeah, so as mentioned, like my path through this game has I've touched on many different aspects of this game within the game and outside of it. And I remember when I was kind of deep in my Blender phase a couple years ago, I started to play with this system that they had called geometry nodes, which, to really broadly explain it, think of it as a really basic system of programming to be able to create really cool scenes, like procedurally generated scenes in Blender. And while I was doing that, this thought came to me, because I wasn't a programmer at the time. This thought came to me as like, man, I'm really enjoying this. Maybe I should just learn some real programming and do some stuff in Runelight. And so I did. Now I'm not I'm not the greatest programmer. I think that if one were to review my code, they would be rather disgusted most of the time. But and here's the big but. It works. The programs work.
Brute
So
force it somehow. Yeah.
exactly. You keep bashing your head against the wall, and eventually that wall's going to give. So that led to the creation of a couple different plugins. I started out with the resting plugin, which at the time we didn't have like a rest emote, so it essentially would just put your character into rest emote. And then eventually I created the 3D weather plugin, which adds some weather effects to your game. I haven't really worked on it in a very long time now, but it's still there and it's still working. And then eventually, um, some of the learnings that I took from making that plugin, I brought forward. Back in 2023, I was in some of the very early discussions regarding sailing, and I was eventually asked after sailing. So sorry, with regards to the new skills. Eventually, once sailing was chosen, I was asked if I could put together the promotional videos for the different parts of the sailing development pipeline, essentially, what they call the refinement period. And we'll probably touch on sailing a little bit later, but the short of it is that what I wanted, I wasn't sure why they picked me, because I'm not really a video creator, not really a video editor. I just sort of, pick up these things as needed. So I was feeling really intimidated at the time, and I almost denied, just purely because I didn't feel like I could do it very well. But eventually I made the decision, okay, I'm going to go ahead and accept the contract and do these videos for them. But like, if I'm going to do this, I need to do this really well. I need to stand out, hopefully in a way that other creators wouldn't. I want to make it matter that I was chosen to do this. And so I started working on what I would eventually call the Creator's Kit plugin. And I'll send you that link right there. You can play that. Um, so pretty much what this plugin does is it allows you to spawn fake objects in your game. These are fake objects, so you can't interact with them, you can't, attack them. You can spawn yourself a twisted bow, but you can't pick it up. You know, these are completely fake objects. They just look like they're real. And with this plugin, you can spawn these objects, which can be, objects around the game. They could be a tree, they could be a market stall, they could be NPCs, they could be, Jad, they could be the wise old man, they could be other players or your own player. So what it essentially allows you to do is create really good-looking scenes in the game that are fairly realistic, and have these different objects animate. And there's a very basic programming system to be able to move them around and have them interact. And so I completed this project. I released the creators kit in September of 2023, so almost 2 years ago now. And since then, obviously it's geared towards creators, so a lot of creators tend to use it. And it's it's been a really cool experience to develop and to work alongside these creators to make them sort of realize the scenes that they want to show off. Um, since then, in my spare time, I've continued to develop this plugin and continue to work on it. And you'll see it in a lot of the content that you see on YouTube. Uh, you'll see it. A lot of people use it to make different poses for thumbnails. People will use it for B-roll within their videos. For example, Gillinor Games, the last couple seasons, have used this plugin a ton to be able to create their B-roll. It also has a bunch of other features, like you can export models via Blender or to Blender or two different 3D model programming, 3D editing programs. So it has those features as well. It does a ton of other stuff as well, which I'm not going to go super in depth into. By the way, Sader, happy birthday!
Thank you.
Yeah, so that's essentially what this plugin does. And it's been a pretty cool experience to develop because, as I mentioned, like I get to be involved in a lot of the different going-ons of different content creators. I get to help them make their videos become real. I get to talk to them on a daily basis. I get to help out, and it's been a really cool experience doing that, and it's something I'm very proud of.
Now, with Creators Kit, this is really for creators. Would you say there's any like use for the average player that just wants to kind of mess around? Is there any implications in the actual game where a normal player would take advantage of this? Is this really just for content's sake?
Are you asking if someone could abuse it?
Not really abuse it necessarily,
Okay,
but is
okay.
there any like actual application for, oh, this is actually going to maybe help you in the game, or there are some weird things that we didn't actually think that, yeah, maybe this actually could be something interesting to make your game look cooler or whatever, or is this simply just for making something like a video?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I imagine the average person probably wouldn't go through the effort of learning the program because I'll fully admit it's a complex program. There's a lot of moving parts. But sure, you could set up a scene that will spawn every time that you log in. If you want to spice up your environment, spice up your POH, all that's sort of possible. I've seen a couple unique uses of it. Solo Mission during Dead Man used its overlay feature to help guide himself through like a dark area that he didn't have a light source for.
Oh, that's sick.
Which which I found that really funny. That was not intended, but hey, I guess if you're stuck in that exact position. I've also seen, which is really cool to me, Saxerpillar did a video a little while back, maybe a couple weeks, maybe a month ago now, of him doing a no-pillar Coliseum.
Yes.
And in order to sort of guide him, rather than just using like tile markers to tell where the borders of his little arena were, he used Creators Kit to spawn a bunch of NPCs, the same ones that spawn when you fight Saul, essentially to make it appear like his arena was a lot smaller. Now, obviously, if you were to click through these characters, you would just walk through them. They're fake objects, right?
Yeah.
But that's part of the challenge is staying within those limits. So yeah, I wouldn't say there's a ton of use for the average person, but certainly if you're a content creator, if you're looking to pitch different ideas to the community and you want to create a scene for it, I think that's excellent as well. If you're an artist using Blender, you'll get a ton of use out of the export functions. And if you really want to be funny, there's a transmog feature where you can transmog into different NPCs and essentially walk around as them. So yeah. That's the general gist of the plugin. Something else I will mention is that for the past long time, I've also been working on a 2.0 update. And I have here, I just sent a video to you. Um, I have, I've made an announcement to this already, but I'll mention it here because this is something that I've been working on since January of 2024, just picking away at it here and there, where pretty much I evolve Creator's Kit to use a keyframing system. So you can make your characters walk around, play different animations in sequence. You can give them overhead prayers. You can give them overhead text. The video will kind of go through what that sort of looks like. When it releases, which is hopefully in the next month or so, I expect it's hopefully going to make some waves in the community and really amplify what people can do with content and creating these sort of pre-rendered scenes.
This looks so cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure to most people it looks very confusing.
Yeah, but seeing it actually in the game just looks amazing that you can program something. And I'm guessing. I mean, I don't know, but this is something I was talking about with Settled, actually, just last cast was, would there ever be potential for you to have like sort of almost a scripted series, something that truly is scripted and like, you could have twists and you could really make a series as a story rather than the traditional gameplay where there's luck involved and whatever else. And yeah. I think this creator kit, is definitely like the tools you would need to produce something almost cinematic and almost just be able to write a story about how you want your RuneScape series to go. Yeah, no, I did listen to that cast. Really good cast. And the funny thing is, I've been thinking of similar things for quite some. Well, I've been thinking of similar things, given that I've been working on this kit for so many years now. Having some sort of, I think it would be really interesting to have a partly scripted series. I think a lot of the appeal. Well, let me go back a little bit. People make RSMVs, RS music videos, and they've been doing it for decades at this point. And obviously, Creator's Kit is essentially the perfect tool to be able to do that. And RSMVs are scripted from start to finish, of course, and people do enjoy them. I think it would be a bit of a harder thing to chew on, like a fully scripted series. If you're a really good storyteller, I could see it happening. I think if you're a really good storyteller, you could probably pull it off and make stories about whatever. And there are some people who do similar things, like Colinello. Essentially he does have a script. It's always historical to RS, but then he produces it with the help of Creator's Kit. And it is just like a fully scripted story based on a historical event within this game. Now, I do wonder, would there be the appeal to have someone just write something completely new? Essentially, write the Lord of the Rings, except RuneScape. I do wonder about that. I almost think that something that might be easier to approach would be a partly scripted series. For a long time, I've thought, and I started to develop at some point, a survival mode plugin. And let me just grab this link here, copied link, and paste it. Should just bring you to my Twitter. A little video of a survival mode plugin, like the bare essentials, where essentially you have, your hunger, your thirst, your warmth meter, and there's different weathers and seasons and all that. But part of me thought, I've always known that I was never going to get 100% into content creation. I've just never been really that interested. But I always thought that maybe one day I would do like a one-off episode of me playing the survival mode, except it's partly scripted, where like if I reach a certain, let's say I make a normal account, a main, and after I hit certain milestones, I script myself some sort of upgrade. So let's say I was doing this in Mauritania, and after I beat the Haunted Mine quest,
I would go up the mountain, and on this altar would be an Armadyl God Sword. And I would, in Creator's Kit, pick up that God Sword. And then in the game, I would just, transfer a God Sword over to, from my other main to this account to be able to bring this scripted event to life. And I've always wondered if that was ever going to be something that would be desired, or people would be invested or interested to see something that is partly scripted, not just completely like 100% real gameplay.
I think 100% people would be into that. There is the caveat, though, of if you're a brand new creator trying to do something, there's just not going to be many eyeballs on it. But you give an idea like that to Settled or another very established creator, and this would go nuclear. I mean, it just would. Just knowing, okay, we have no idea what's happening, and we're just going to enjoy this as content. We know that this is scripted in elements. We know that there's still the element of gameplay that we're seeing, but going, getting to that next hurdle and just having a fully scripted, like, okay, here's the next item that you get, like, that just sounds super cool. And to know that this really does have an endpoint because the creators already thought about it, so there's going to be some excitement and some twists and other things like that. I think that just sounds very cool. And again, a lot of this has to come down to execution. Not just you can't just have this idea and it's going to go wonderfully no matter what. You got to obviously polish it and everything else.
No, I think in your cast with Settled the other week, I think you guys put it really well that having a story behind your creation really helps elevate it to the next level. I think it's the difference between a series that's just kind of, you log in, you do your work, you post up what you did for the day on YouTube, versus something that you can get really invested in. When Swampletics was at its height, people Settled had a plan in mind of what to do the next couple of steps, and he would sort of feed into this kind of guessing what's next, theory crafting aspect of it, or getting the community together to think about, how do I solve this certain problem? And people loved it. I think him being able to build that sort of narrative arc with just with a very simple rule set that people could understand got people super invested in the story of the series. And through that, they would also get invested in theory crafting what's next and guessing at his next move.
Yeah, there's so much that goes into this kind of thing, and I think a lot of it is really there's so much behind the scenes to make an amazing series. I want to actually I want to skip a few things and actually talk about, because you brought up the survival mode, talk about new game modes entirely. But before we do that, let's take a quick little break. I'm going to go pee really quick.
I need to as well. Thanks.
Okay, perfect. A survival RuneScape mode. I don't know, how popular something like that would be. It's definitely been overdone in other games.
Yes.
But to think of something, maybe outside the box that we haven't considered could be really cool. And I know you've listened to casts of mine, and I'm always advocating for a new permanent game mode. The last ones we've gotten were just the group Ironman modes. And before that, it was just, we had hardcore, we had UIM, we had normal Ironman. And I would love it if there was a brand new permanent game mode that kind of is a little bit different. Maybe it's got some elements of that Ironman sprinkled in. But I want to get your take on just new game modes in general. And do you think permanence is good, or would you rather see something more temporary?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. First off, just to answer that last question quickly, I think we've had quite a bit of success with temporary game modes. I think Leagues and Deadman have they absolutely break the either the player count or the viewing count whenever they come out. Everyone seems to come around these as events, right? These are temporary phenomenon, and people really love them for that. But I'm always wary about having entirely permanent new game modes. And that's for a couple of reasons. I think the first one being that every game mode adds a certain amount of debt that the developers have to account for in every update they do. Think of how many unique systems there are to Ironman, to Ultimates, to Hardcore, to Group Ironman. all of these things have to be accounted for with every update. And so the problem, if you continue to creep these permanent game modes, you increase the amount of work that has to be done every single update to be able to accommodate them. The worst part, well, maybe not the worst part, another bad part is that making something official makes it so that Jagex has to accommodate those players. That sounds really cruel. How do I phrase this differently? Um, the let's go back a little bit maybe. Peers have been in RuneScape for a long time, but it's not an official game mode. And yet they do demand a certain amount of time to themselves. Not that much time, they don't really have that many demands, but every single update that introduces a new weapon or a new piece of gear or makes it easier to acquire a piece of gear, you always have to be thinking in the back of your head, how will peers adapt to this? What changes need to be made based on their account? And the thing is, peers are an unofficial account mode. It's not even one that Jagex formally supports. How much more effort have we put in to game modes that we do officially support? If we are providing this much extra effort for peers, for people, or for like pet hunters, for people who dedicate themselves to PVM, or for high level skilling, all these different, even unofficial game modes demand a certain amount of attention. And this is why when they talked about having like a bunch of new official game modes, they're talking about like, different area locked accounts. This would have been a couple years ago, I think.
Yeah, I was on one of those surveys of, I think it was end of 2023. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. That was probably, these were the prominent thoughts on the top of my mind, that if you introduce an official Swamp Man account mode, then you are required with every update to think about that account mode way more than you have to right now. Because I'm sure there's probably like 20 different Mauritania locked Iron Men out there. But it's not a large enough demographic that you really have to worry about it when developing, when creating new ideas, when implementing things into the game. If you make that official, you not only increase that player base drastically, but you're also, in a way, saying that this is something that we are supportive of, to the point that we are willing to dedicate development time to you. Whereas I'm a much bigger fan of the way that we currently do these different account restrictions, where it's like, no, you are the player, you are the director of your account mode. You determine all the rules, all the restrictions. You tell yourself if you're allowed to take a pestle and mortar into this area. Don't start begging Jagex to do all these things for you.
That's a good point. Yeah, that I think you've described it very well, especially with very niche game modes, something like an area lock, something like, especially if you have a bunch of variety of it. It wouldn't just be Mauritania. You'd have a Karamja only and a Zaya only and whatever else. Or if you had a task generator thing, like I know that was one of the ideas brought up. Not a huge fan of that personally. And yeah, you're totally right, because with any new game mode, there's going to now be the more time goes on with those game modes, they're going to start getting pretty set on this is the meta for it, and don't change the meta, and this update will affect us, so don't do that.
Yeah.
Let me just cross this by you. I mean, one of the ideas that I've always had is it's much more broad. It's not just an area thing, but it's the idea of Mithril Man mode, which is you are basically an Iron Man that can trade with other Mithril Men. You cannot use the Grand Exchange, but you can trade with any other Mithril Men. So I'll just briefly go over some of the cool parts about it, which is that you can boss with other Mithril Men. So you're like an Iron Man. If you have a main account, you're obviously not going to get the drop. But if you're with other Mithril Men, it's kind of like a large group Iron Man. And then you'd have these nice little trading hubs, probably bring back Falador Park, for example, and have the Mithril Men show up there, do their bank sales. So you get that element of nostalgia. Now, don't get me wrong, there would 100% very quickly be some Runelight plugins or third-party sites that are just going to be super easy to get your stuff traded over. But it would add that element of a fresh economy kind of. And I can't see, I want to cross it by you, I can't see right now huge, development time that would be like, oh, okay, well, this update's coming out and I was going to devalue Mithril Man. And I think part of it is just because it really is just a different elements from Iron Man mode and Group Iron Man all kind of combined into one, and it doesn't feel like there's anything too outside the box.
Yeah. First off, despite me going on a rant about new game modes just 5 minutes ago, I do want to say, like, I'm not completely 100% against the idea. Just that, like, I don't want to be sprinkling them in all the time. The survey that they had about all those different account modes, that was like, for me, that was like, no, this is way too much. You need to, if you're going to talk about new game modes, you need to really scale this back. The one thing I'll say, go ahead.
Well, I was going to just quickly on that. In my head, a new permanent game mode would have to be once every 2 years at the very minimum. I mean, or at the maximum. Like that would be it. I mean, really, I just want to see one new permanent game mode. I mean, we don't even need to talk about it again for the next 5 years, and just one, something like that. Or maybe two if there's like the kind of UIM UIM plus the normal. I mean, I could imagine maybe there would be some element of, we want the hardcore Mithril Men, or something like that.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't even consider that like a completely new mode. Like if you're going to have Mithril Man, you might as well throw a hardcore symbol on there as well, right? To the specific idea, is this much different than Fresh Start Worlds?
And that is the difference, is the permanence of it. Because Fresh Start Worlds had that element of like, okay, this is actually quite exciting. It's a separate server, but everyone eventually gets transferred over as a main account to the server, and it does end. So there's not that, for me and for many people, the huge appeal of RuneScape is the kind of endlessness of it. You really can just keep progressing. So,
Okay, no, I think that's a fair point. I would say, like, I don't know, I'm not the most fascinated by it. Although it's, if it were to come on, I'd be like, yeah, sure, some people are going to enjoy it. I've always, even at the time the GE was pulled, I wasn't that enthused. Oh my goodness, I'm going to get in so much controversy here. I wasn't that enthused about it because we had already had a trading post by that point, which was, roughly like the G, except it helped you meet other players to perform trades. And we also had Sae Bae at the time, which also helped get players together to help perform trades. The two things that pushed me to voting for the GE were, number one, first of all, just a lot of people wanted it. I felt that it would make the player base really thrive during a time where it was not thriving that well. This was, 2015. It was doing okay, the game. The other reason was because trading in person caused so many issues with scamming. There were scammers everywhere. It was a huge problem, and Jagex could not tackle it. And I do worry that Mithril Man might run into the same issue of, well, now it's just full of scammers everywhere trying to get your goods because you are a vulnerable Mithril Man who can't use the GE.
I will say that could happen, but you have to understand the scammer will have to be playing Mithril Man mode to even contribute. True. So there isn't really that element of real world trading as much, I'd guess. There's probably not going to be as much botting either because, I mean, potentially maybe swapping rates are like, okay, I have my Mithril Man.
I think swapping would still be big, yeah.
It definitely would. And I think Mithril Man kind of scratches the itch of, you're kind of an Iron Man, but you can definitely swap and just build your account up really quickly. But I think there's still that cool element of, hey, I want to be a Mithril Man and I want to supply the market with, my redwood logs because I'm going to rush wood cutting and people are going to want their redwood logs or whatever else. And I just think we lose that with the Grand Exchange. And don't get me wrong, traditional trading in this game, I mean, I haven't done it in fucking years, but it is a nightmare to some extent. Yeah. But I think a lot of the appeal of Mithril Man is playing as an Iron Man. And then when you do enjoy a boss, you're not going to be able to use the resources. Now you can get the things that you don't like to do, but you still have that core Iron Man feel to it where, oh my God, I hate Armadillo. I'm just going to buy my Armadillo. And so some other Mithril Man's going to do it. And I'm just going to do a quick trade over here and I'll give him a bunch of random stuff that he wants,
Yeah. Yeah, again, like, if I were to live in my ideal version of RuneScape, I don't know whether it would have a GE, because I did like that sort of interpersonal nature of trading, even though, it was really limited interaction. Everyone kind of just acted like bots, or were bots trading. Um, and or is their alt that they had on the side to sit at the GE, or to sit at Varrock West Bank forever. So I can't say like I'm super enthused about the idea, but I also don't hate it either. It's like, yeah, like I could see myself enjoying that again. It's just a matter of, would we commit the resources to it?
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like you're kind of more in favor of continuing what we are doing, deadman modes, leagues, more temporary aspects, because it won't mean more dev time every single week on updates of making sure this isn't going to
Yeah,
break a new game mode.
yeah. That's essentially where I'm at right now.
That's fair. Let's now kind of step back into the other points that you had, which was what it's like to develop in Runelight and the direction of content creation in OSRS. Those are obviously two separate things,
Yeah,
but I want to get your takes on these.
yeah. Yeah, I thought it'd be interesting just to talk very briefly about Runelight development, because it's a side of the community that most people don't see. Now, I want to very clearly delineate my position and what I do versus what other people do. Runelight is split into two general categories. You have the core, which is like all the default plugins that you have, and you have the plugin hub, which is essentially other developers who are not part of the core team, who are creating all their own plugins. So when you download Runelight, it has all the core plugins already installed. These are the things that Adam and Co are directly interfacing with all the time. They ensure that this core, it meets certain standards. So it meets certain code standards, certain quality standards, so that it's not breaking and causing everybody to crash, as some plugin hub plugins will. They also ensure that these are the plugins that players they feel players should have at a base level. So, tile markers, they feel that tile markers are broadly applicable enough that all players should probably have access to this. Versus you look at the plugin hub, not every player needs 117 HD. It's a, really cool plugin, but that's not part of the core of Runelight. That's something that is felt to be extra. So what I do is my plugins are all part of the plugin hub. They're all part of what used to be called third-party plugins, now called plugin hub plugins. So I don't have to I don't have to meet the same standards as core Runelight development, but that also gives me a lot more freedom to just kind of do my own thing and make what I want to make. So um, plugin hub development is generally done in Java. This is something that I had never really done any programming before I started with Runelight, so I had to learn this myself for the most part. Wonderfully, the Runelight developers are quite helpful, so long as you're not directing basic Java questions at them. They will help you with Runelight questions, but Java questions are mostly ones that you have to figure out yourself. It's a really interesting place to be, because I think when you first start developing, you start to understand the game to a completely different level, to the point where I can have entire conversations with other developers that you wouldn't be able to understand in the least bit, because these are all things that you don't need to know as a player. And it opens your eyes in a way to all the sort of inner workings of how a game a game looks, a game works, and it's just a really interesting place to be. It's also a place, of course, where you get to hear about different types of abuse, and you get to have very nuanced conversations about what is legal and what is not in terms of the game. Because right now, I could probably quite easy rig up a bot client and, just do whatever with it. Um, but obviously, there's certain rules that you have to abide by. The other thing is that, with regards to cheating in particular, is Jagex has a list of different third-party client features that they don't allow. And this is a list that you have to abide by, and that Runelight themselves, they review every single change you make to your plugin before they let it in the game. There's a review process, essentially, to make sure that you are abiding by these different rules and not cheating. So what it looks like to me as a developer is I start by creating a plugin, I submit it to Runelight, they accept it, or they ask me to make certain changes. Then down the line, if I want to make a new update, I create the update on my end, then I submit that update to Runelight. They have some people review it before they let it through. And again, if there's anything sketchy, if there's anything that's going to blatantly like destroy the client as soon as you open it up, they'll call you out on it and be like, "Hey, that can't be there." But yeah, I mean, for the most part, people are pretty good, and the reviews go without a hitch. That does mean that that does mean that you are required to code to some standard. They don't, as I mentioned, the core Runelight, they care a lot about standards. Plugin Hub, not so much. So long as you're not completely breaking the game, or you're not introducing obvious cheats into the game, they usually let things slide.
Now, I have a question on kind of the pushing the limits of, because one of the things I've seen with the plugin hub is I'll be streaming and somebody's like, "Oh, have you seen this plugin? This really helps do something really conveniently," and I'll download it and I'll be shocked at how
how is this allowed?
Yeah. I mean, I just remember back in the day, and a lot of this stuff really does make sense. In my eyes, I see us as kind of getting into that. We're entering the enlightenment of this game where, okay, let's get rid of just absolutely masochistic things in this game, elements where it's not even fun, but we deem it as like somehow old school to just suffer unnecessarily. One of those, I'll just bring up one example, was right-click pickpocketing elves and Vyres for so long.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this is out of control. This is so pointless, and it's for integrity's sake or something like that. This is bad. And, obviously back then it was actually considered cheating to use a left-click thing, which is just so silly. But one of the things I've seen lately is a plugin like, I don't know what it's called, like quality of life construction or something, where if you're doing default construction in your POH, not doing mahogany homes or anything, you could just hold one key and just left click. I mean, left click con was something I was advocating for. I was a huge fan of that. But I always thought, okay, we could have the left click, but maybe you still got to click the 1 and then switch to the 2 or the space bar or whatever else you're doing. And now it's just, no, you just hold one key and it'll do both things. It'll kind of auto switch it for you. And I'm like, don't get me wrong, it's extremely nice. It's like super cozy. But I'm like, okay, so is this just kind of where it's like, it's fine. It's not explicitly against the rules. It's kind of breaking the standard a bit, but we'll let it slide. And then it just expands from there where, okay, we're sliding down this slippery slope. You probably have plenty of examples of things where you're like, okay, that's probably not good, but what are your thoughts? Do you think ultimately it's a good thing to have this?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think if you walked back to 2007, there were already clients at that time. SwiftKit is one that people will often quote. Coming into old school, I was part of the general community at the time, which was very against change. And we can talk about that in a little bit, but pretty much when OS Buddy came around and completely dominated the client sphere at the time, I really didn't like it. Even when Runelight came out and offered everything for free, because OS Buddy had part of it was like a paid subscription for some extra bonuses, I wasn't even a big fan of Runelight coming in, because a big thing for me was that I felt that changes in the game needed to be pulled. And these clients could provide major changes to the game, as you've just described, without consulting the community at all. It's just sort of this completely autonomous decision based on a community member to transform the game and make it significantly easier for people. And especially, people used to be a lot more cagey about third-party clients at the time, partly because of this. It was essentially, people were also a lot more protective about XP rates at the time. And of course, you're going to be changing a lot of XP rates with some of these client features. So I really did not start using clients until Runelight. The one thing that tipped me over the line to use Runelight was surprisingly the Skybox. When that came out, I was like, yeah, that looks good. I'm gonna download it now.
Probably the only one in history for that to have been the reason. That's great.
I know. And you know what? It's even to today, like, there's some things which I genuinely cannot believe were held back from the game for so long. The GPU, being able to utilize your GPU, Jagex released their official client like a couple of years ago. We didn't have an official GPU utilization till then. That is crazy, right? That is just insane. But then, even still to today, I mean, you look at my plugins. One changes your resting animation. One makes there look like there's weather. And one spawns fake objects into the game. You know, they're not gameplay modifying plugins. That's never been something that I've really been about. And the number of Runelight plugins that I use that actually change gameplay are quite limited. Because I'm still, oh man, I'm old. That's number one. And to a certain degree, I don't like the game looking and feeling vastly different than how it's intended in a way. I get that's a really broad statement to make, but I get by, like, when I did Hallowed Sepulchre, I did it entirely without true tile, entirely without tile indicators, entirely without tile markers.
Respect.
Yeah.
What about the arrow markers? Would you even mark those, or are you just oh Jesus Christ?
None.
That is bad. I've done a few runs like that because I already learned how to do it previously. But holy hell, it gets rough.
Yeah. No, I think.
I need to just say one more thing, just to make it absolutely beyond masochistic. You know what you should have done is you should have gone to the zoom out settings on like the little settings button and turned on to default zoom and locked it like that. That would have been the absolute just death.
Yeah, I might have been. I don't think I was doing overhead.
You weren't zooming out like drastically. I mean, because when you do the default zoom, I mean, it's to see arrows any bit. You have to go to a full on.
I see what you mean.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Okay, so sorry, I thought you were thinking like vertical camera. Like
no. I'm talking about restore default zoom like that. And not being able to zoom out at all. That would be just
okay. Wait a second. I have to look when Hallowed Sepulchre came out because I may have not. No, maybe I did. It was 2020. Maybe I did. I can't quite recall.
Okay. Just throwing on additional layers to just how bad can this possibly get? Yeah.
The thing is that the game's art is intentional. It is intended to guide you, and sometimes it does it better, and sometimes it does it worse. Obviously, certain things in Hallowed Sepulchre, especially, is when you might notice it doing it kind of worse. But you can also train your brain to be able to accommodate jank. I think the experience of playing on a game where ticks only occur at every 0.6 seconds, that is incredible jank that you no longer feel because you've been playing so long, right?
Yep.
It's the same thing with a lot of plugins, is that when you don't have them, you learn the base game a lot better. Now, you may never learn it to the degree that you would with plugins. You know, first of all, some plugins will just straight up show things that you can't see otherwise. If you think like PvP, there's like the death dot sort of plugins where you can actually see the models of the other players underneath you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you can't you can't replicate that just by knowing the game really well. You might be able to get better at guessing what that player is going to be wearing by not using the plugin, because again, your brain is sort of training you to have to accommodate without. But a lot of the game is very usable without plugins. Now I know that this might hurt you, for example, but I don't really use menu entry swapper.
See, that is the one plugin. Like, I've asked this question before. You probably heard it. Even was if you could only have one plugin. I mean, yours is Skybox, which is silly. No, I'm kidding. I don't know what it actually would be. Maybe it is Skybox. But for me, it's menu entry swapper. It's the most overpowered. It's the most quality of life. You could get from any plugin. I think. Again, I would still hate that. I would still hate to only have that one, but that would be the absolute one I'd need.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not like I don't use it. Like, I was just buying stuff like buckets of slime from the charter ship the other day, and I was like, I just, Shopscape is so bad. It's so terrible. I'm turning on this plugin. This is just awful.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, for the most part, I do have it off. And again, like, I think you could have conversations about, whether having to right click is a really meaningful interaction. If you had like an AI that always just swapped left click to whatever you want to do to the top, right? Would that turn out to be a better game? And like, my answer is like, there's a good chance it would, right? But yeah, I mean, again, this is just to go back and say that, like, I don't use a ton of plugins. I like to have a clean looking screen. That's a big thing. So I don't really like tile markers. I don't like I don't like having a bunch of green boxes to click for the most part, unless I'm like true AFK, like I'm paying attention once every 30 seconds. So yeah, that's generally my approach to different plugins and to how I look at Runelight, which is kind of ironic because I now develop in Runelight, whereas like I would probably still thrive in a world without it.
Yeah, I think me and you agree a lot. It's funny, you just mentioned green boxes. As a green box appears when I'm mining here now at Camtorum, mining these calcified rocks.
I'm judging you right now. Yeah. I'm really looking down at you right now.
Yeah. I could tell. I could just feel it. I feel the aura. No, but it's like I'm definitely way into the aesthetics of my game, and because I play it daily, I'm just more like, okay, I don't want a circus on my floor or on the ground of all the tile markers I need. I will reduce it to the minimum, usually. And when there is the customization to change the colors or make things very opaque, I like that. Now, there are just some plugins where it's like there really is no changing. It's like you're going to have the bright green click box, and that's it. It's either that or nothing. And I'm like, okay, whatever, we'll take it. But yeah, I think I am with you ultimately. Yeah,
I mean, the art of old school, which we can get into in a little while, like it really does matter to me, because at the end of the day, I think it does matter to a degree to everyone, just to different degrees. Because I think if you look at the top levels of PVM, like, these people, if you gave them a spreadsheet that was functional, they'd probably be like super happy. They'd be like, oh man, Yama is, those 4 boxes on the Excel spreadsheet. It looks really great. I'm sure there's people out there who would be like that, but for me, I'm definitely on the end where like it really matters to me how the game appears, its aesthetic, its ability to immerse me, and so I don't like having a bunch of extra clutter on the screen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, kind of going a little bit back to, these sort of sort of the integrity aspect, or the different overpowered plugins out there. I still one of the things that sort of trips me up about Runelight is that we do see a fair amount of that still, of plugins slipping in that are doing things that we probably shouldn't be doing. But one of the dangerous things about it especially is that once Jagex reacts to some of these features, it's already been in the game for months now, even years. And so like, in a way, there's no turning back.
Mm-hmm.
So every once in a while, like, I guess sometimes I wish Jagex would just pay a little bit more attention to what people are developing, what new features are coming into the game, because it's one of those things that if you get to it quickly, it doesn't become a problem. Kind of like how they dealt with there was the one plugin that was like visual sounds or something like that people were doing some stuff with, or being able to, predict some sort of PVM thing earlier than it should have been. And that was one of the cases where Jagex got to it relatively quickly. I just wish that they'd be a little bit more on top of the ball sometimes, for sure.
Yeah. And it's a matter of, at this point, if it almost feels like you got to snip it in the butt, like just immediately. Like within a week.
Or people will explode. Yeah.
Yeah. I always wonder as well. This is something I rarely talk about. And again, a lot of it is just me just kind of loosening my quote unquote grip with the game, just not being as judgmental, just kind of being like, you know what, the game is just very much in the community's hands, whatever. If people enjoy this, am I really getting negatively affected by this? But you'll see, look at Yama contracts these days where people are doing these insanely difficult challenges now, but really it can't be done without true tile and these tile markers and things being absolutely mapped out to the extreme. I always just bring up the example of, Wooks originally doing his Infernal Cape, and you watch that VOD back, and there's no such thing as tile markers, no such thing as true tile. There's no such thing as any of this. He wasn't even dropping the runes in the vials at that point. It was just, this is when that is when PVM was like, okay, this is something special if you can get good at this, because but nowadays it really does feel like much of PVM it's gotten so much more difficult because the devs know that we're all going to be using these crazy plugins. And if you're not going to use them, good fucking luck. There's just no way. There's no way you can do some of these things now without plugins.
So I would be curious as to exactly how they go about testing the developers. Because obviously they're aware that people will use plugins.
Mm-hmm.
But at least not till very long ago, we were testing sailing with, what was the... No, the alpha didn't have some Runelight capabilities. But when they were initially... Maybe I'm going into completely different territory. But from my knowledge, at least for the longest time, they weren't testing things with Runelight. I don't know what it's like in-house. That's the problem. Is I don't know what they have access to. And now that they do have the Jagex client, like the official client, which does have some tile functionality, maybe they are testing it with that. I would be very curious to ask a high-level PVMer who's been asked to come into office, what exactly were you guys using? Because it is a bit of a question. Are they actually developing these bosses with or without all the features that we have? Because a lot of those features, I suspect, would break inside of their internal testing environment if they were to try to use them. And so, it is a bit of a curiosity. I'd be very curious to ask a high-level PVMer exactly what that looks like. Because to a certain degree, I do think it's valuable to be able to complete a boss without, as a developer, to be able to beat a boss without having access to all these different plugins. And maybe that's why they got so off about the Yama timer, like how long it took for them to kill Yama. Or maybe they just didn't understand how crazy real players are, right? It's hard to say.
I feel like they're starting to understand in depth how quickly things can get solved and how creative players can be with solving bosses. So I just feel like there's no way you'll know that until you put it in the hands of 100,000 players. Like, okay, now somebody's going to figure it out. It's just interesting to me because what the game has turned into in regards to PVM, at least, really is just click this tile at this tick, click this boss, which is just a big square. Everybody has the whole square marking of who you're attacking. Man, when you look back at old God Wars footage, there is no NPC indicators. You can't even hardly tell where Zami actually is in relation to you to some extent. It's just like, okay, it's just so different. And the thing is, I'm not against necessarily what's happening to the game. It's just like you just are like, okay, this is the game we're playing now, which is like very, very tick based, very mechanical, and very much click on this tile, click on this tile, click on this tile, this timing, and that's just what it's become. And many people, including myself, genuinely love it. However, like you said, and I think we both agree at the aesthetics of it, when you almost feel obligated to turn your whole place into a circus of squares, it just gets wild.
Yeah. No, for sure. No, I think that, it must be challenging as a developer to be able to sort of accommodate both these different aspects, especially in a game that, as you've described, is just so well understood at this point. Like we are scientists taking this game into the laboratory. We are no longer hunter-gatherers, just kind of figuring things out on the fly, just like, oh, I don't know, the Zamorak demon looks like he's roughly on this tile, maybe roughly on that tile. I'm just going to run here. I hope I don't get hit, right?
Yep.
And, it's inevitable that this is going to happen to any game that has been out this long and has this big of a population, that you're going to lose some of that magic of not knowing what's behind the screen, what's within the black box of these servers, right? Now we understand that so well, it's impossible to go back. I think, like you've described on other casts, like, can we ever really have an Inferno 2 that feels the same as that initial run? Because I was there, Gandalf, 3,000 years ago when Wooks defeated Zuck, and my goodness, that was an event.
Oh, yeah.
That was such an event. And it's like, I don't know if we can ever have something quite like that feels the same, that feels both like a mastery of the mechanics, but also not like stupidly unfair. Like, I think a lot of complaints about some bosses these days is like, oh, you just have to pay attention for 5 minutes straight. It's not hard, but you miss one tick and it's just a death. Right? Without the mechanics being obnoxious. I don't know if we'll ever have that same sort of triumph, that same sort of journey when we know the game so well.
I think there still can be. I honestly feel like the Colosseum was almost at that level because it took nearly a full day for Porkazar to get it, and then Wooks shortly after. True. It feels like the way you achieve what the Inferno felt like is really have a very long-winded fight where, okay, this is genuinely going to take 2 hours, and nobody's going to complete it, because what you can do as the dev is just be like, I'm going to throw in this random mechanic that you don't know about. And you're just going to, every single person that gets there isn't going to be able to figure it out until eventually there's enough community like knowledge that, okay, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do something special. And because of the just sheer length of it, it'll take a few days to complete potentially. And what they need to do, which is just really sad, is do something sort of counterintuitive. Like one of the things they did with Beneath Cursed Sands in order to gain access to Toa was they have this mini fight right outside the entrance where if you protect melee, you get fucked up, where the guy is attacking the melee. It's like, okay, you're just doing an anti-mechanic just to fuck with us. And they could do something very similar in that regard where, you think you're supposed to shoot this, and guess what? Now you've just actually hard locked or soft locked, or I don't know, hard lock, soft lock. I don't know the difference, honestly. But you, basically, like, as soon as you shoot an arrow with this guy, he's now invulnerable. Like you cannot attack him now, or just something very silly like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think the comparison might be something like kind of the meme about Dark Souls is like you're just walking along a hallway and someone like flies through the roof and kills you. So you have to you have to know it's coming up. So you have to take, walk 2 steps forward, 10 steps back, or like, I suspect that most of the community would be rather annoyed if you did that. But I do. Go ahead.
There's actually just something hilarious about that kind of Dark Souls of like, okay, you're just like preemptively doing this thing. In fact, what was the movie? There's some movie of I guess I'm just thinking Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
The movie where he just keeps reviving every day and respawning, and then eventually you just see he's done so many runs of this where he just knows exactly what's about to happen. He steps here, he shoots that, he's just blindly doing everything. And
That's a fun movie.
Oh, it's one of my absolute favorites. Probably my favorite movie, honestly. It's so good.
Yeah.
I think of some of the really cool things. I just got to bring up Yama because I want to make it very clear. I am not shitting on the way PVM has evolved in our game. In fact, I see Yama and I see the kind of like dono fly and those weird tech where people are just running and you just click these tiles. And man, if you were to see it without the tiles, you are just looking like a total pimp running around, treating the boss like you are making the boss your bitch because you just know exactly what to do. It really feels what they did was they captured what I've always wanted in PVM, which was a solo Olm style fight where this is just rhythmic. Olm doesn't know what to do. He keeps turning, he keeps missing you, and you keep running, and it's just you're just dominating him. And I think Yama is capturing that, and I think there is something cool. And just like you, I think this whole thought came up because of what you mentioned about Dark Souls, where it's like initially it can just be a total headache, but eventually you figure it out. You know exactly where to stand. Everything's choreographed, and it's just great.
Yeah, I definitely think like I'm not going to pretend like I'm a PVMer. I don't really boss, so I'm just going to take your word for it, to be honest. But I think there's probably like a balance of being able to of a developer pulling out cheesy mechanics all the time on you. Like if you were to walk down that same hallway in Dark Souls and every 4 plus or minus 2 steps another one of these monsters jumps through the roof at you, like at a certain point that's going to get kind of annoying, right? So I'm sure there's a balance to it, but I do agree with kind of your initial kind of point about making a boss an event has to have a bit of that journey. Inferno's a long one, right? As well as pulling out surprises. Like, my goodness, I feel like the 3 Yad, that was that's one of the good kind of surprises.
Oh yeah.
What a great moment. Yeah. Let's
touch on the direction of content creation in OSRS. This is something I've covered with Jimmy and Settled just recently, and other creators as well. Like, I mean, one of the things I mentioned with Settled was just how he really did set the scene with like the snowflake builds and really taking advantage of storytelling and content creation, where beforehand it was just like, here's a PK montage or here's just a basic progress series. And now it's gotten a lot more creative. And so, I want to hear your take. What do you watch exactly? Are you pretty broadly watching a lot of OSRS things? Do you have your favorites, in regards to like series or whatever? Or like what do you consume OSRS wise?
Yeah, so the stuff that I like to consume a lot of generic stuff that, well, I don't want to call it generic, but a lot of stuff that the general population would also consume. So like I'm a big Settled fan. I've been watching Josh Isn't Gaming, been watching his stuff for quite some time, as well as Limpwort. Oh man, guy's a machine.
Oh yeah.
I watch quite a bit of different old school content. I always like to dig into people who talk about the game. That's always one of the most interesting. That's why I like this podcast, is because a lot of the talk is about the game, and I feel that's something that you just don't see as much, or maybe it just isn't quite as popular as long running series.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm with you as well. I like ramblers and podcasters and everything else. So I'm with you there.
Yeah, but I think you've outlined it pretty well. That like a decade ago, you'd just be seeing PK montages, account builds, from scratch to 100 mil or whatever. You also used to. I remember quite fondly looking at videos showing off different max hits. Like, this is
it was literally right on my mind. I was about to mention that. It's hilarious how those, I mean, I'm pretty sure one of those has pulled over 1 million views. Just literally just a guy whacking skeletons with Darox.
Yeah.
It was just insane.
Yeah. And I mean RS music videos have been around forever. Those are usually you don't see too many of them nowadays, but they're still around. But it's certainly like, yeah, I definitely think we saw with Settled in particular, like this huge shift where people suddenly, it's almost like you open their eyes and everyone became creative all at the same time. Or maybe he just did it well enough that this sort of taking these different snowflake account builds or different challenges, suddenly everyone is a little bit more aware of it just because it got big to begin with. Um, and we've seen some pretty good series throughout the years. I mean, you've got, of course, Settled. You've got Jimmy's Quest Cape series. Um, you have Verf, of course. Extra Keen is Desert. And of course, Limport and all the other chunk men, which is something I will very briefly lament, is that there are so many chunk accounts right now. It's pretty dry. I'm not gonna lie.
It has been overdone. It is beating a dead horse and beyond.
Yeah.
It's completely biodegraded into the ground, and we're still beating the ground now. Yeah.
Yeah, and something that we touched on it a little bit before, but I think one of the big disadvantages of the chunk account is that it's long. It's so long, and there's not really well-defined goals for most series.
Yeah.
Where you're like, it's so hard to create a story when the story just doesn't really have an end. It's a TV series that is now into its 30th season, and it's just still kind of trucking along.
Yeah.
Right? So I think what I especially appreciate about what Settled does is that, and he talked about this a lot in his cast, was that he always brings something fresh or something that's not seen much. For example, with Swampletics, there was already a Mauritania locked Iron Man who was doing YouTube videos. It was a small-time YouTuber, and I think he quit not super long after Settled started. But Settled wasn't completely new. He was aware that this other creator was doing. He just wanted to do the same thing. So it's not like Settled, made this completely new idea, but he certainly elevated it to a completely new level. Where like the grinds that he would do each episode and the story that he would write with it, these were all just really, really good things. And so when he's pulling off like these escape room videos, or he's doing this, I can't take 1 HP of damage, like this is the kind of stuff that I would really like to see with content creation, is people really taking these ideas and taking it to a whole new level. Because I think the snowflake bit is still strong. I'm just kind of waiting for the next thing to happen.
Yeah, and it feels like there's so many things to do. I mean, it's just endless, the amount of creative ideas, and it does feel like we've kind of locked ourselves into a little box now. It felt like we expanded so much, but now we've just hit the walls and we're like, okay, what's next?
Exactly. And now like there are other things that are going really well and really strong, like Gillenor Games. Man, oh my goodness, Soup puts on such a show. Like it's really, really quite incredible what he can pull off. And of course, Ali is in there as well. She's done a fantastic job with the editing too and the B-roll. Really, and again, this is something that like people, what I like about these series is, and what I like about old school in general, is just people coming together. It's just making community events, making everyone excited about the same thing and talking about the same thing and theory crafting the same thing. And that's what really, I think that's what takes an interesting series and brings it to a whole nother level of enjoyment, is people tackling it together. And I think Gillenor Games does that really well. And I also think Deadman All-Stars absolutely crushed it.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Was an event. I don't know, were you following it pretty closely?
I wasn't, I mean, definitely not as close as other people that were just camped on Twitch for a full week. But man, did they do such a good job with the highlights. Getting Tasty as the host, we're all used to Tasty as well, so he knows what he's doing. He's used to hosting the Daily Behemoth highlights. You get him, first of all, it's like a daily highlight, so you don't feel like you're very far behind. and man, it just killed it. Like you got the full clips of exactly what's happening, and it just kept you up to date. And it was short-lived, so this event is not going on for 3 months or anything crazy. Where it's like, all right, we've lost the hype.
Yeah.
It's short and it's concise. Everybody on Reddit's talking about. There's clips from every point of view. It was just an absolute success across the board.
Yeah.
And yeah, bravo to Solo Mission for setting it up. Bravo to all the creators. And yeah, that was just a massive. And the other amazing thing is just how massive of an opportunity it is for all these guys. I mean, you see, I mean, West Ham is, he's already a big name out there, but he, in my opinion, had always been, I feel like, almost underappreciated as a content creator. Like he is such a good content creator, and I feel like an opportunity like this really blows up his channel. I mean, he was pulling over 5K viewers concurrently for just a full week.
Yeah.
So it's just a great opportunity for everybody, and everybody's loving it and talking about it.
Yeah. And again, that's the thing that brings this sort of content to a whole nother level for me, is everyone treat it like a sports event, right?
Yeah.
And everyone's excited, and everyone's feeling all this energy, and they're rooting for their team, and no one's taking well, maybe some people do take it quite seriously, for better or worse. But there, at the same time, there's this level of fun that overlies it all, that people care most about, their creators and them having a good time. Like I watched a lot of the Skill Spec Smorks, and oh my goodness, they're just you can't write some of the things that happens to them and some of the things that they do.
Yeah.
It's just it really helped. And yeah, as you said, like, it helped me find other creators and just really be able to kind of understand them more. And now I'm probably going to be looking at them a little bit more often, because I really like their attitude and their the type of content that they produce.
Yeah. It's just a wonderful thing to see, and the community all gets behind it. We're all talking about the same stuff. It's just great. Do you think, though, that now, because Jagex is giving so much more access to the players and content creators to make their own stuff, do you think we're ever going to see something like Deadman Mansions again, or something that's very much a massive expense for Jagex to fly people out and to have like an in-house sort of event? Do you think that's ever going to happen again, or would you even want it to?
Question.
Do you think it's even worth it for that?
Yes, I do want it. I think that the best sales pitch to Jagex for this, like a Deadman Mansion again, is All Stars. Again, as you mentioned, the numbers they were pulling in, like the money these guys must have raked in during this week, like it must have been insane. And I'd be so curious if Jagex's subscription numbers budged. Like especially if they were to host a Deadman like a couple weeks after All Stars finished, like I could see that going big. And I think if they time that correctly to have a sort of in-house creator event, that they advertise properly, that they get the community around, and then host something like a Deadman afterwards, I think it's totally worth it. And I'm sure that they're having these conversations right now. Like, I feel like you would be an irresponsible businessman if you were not having this conversation right now.
Yeah, I agree. Man, I mean, I barely even remember now Deadman Mansions, but I do remember just how funny it was. And it was almost like a reality TV show for a little bit. Just thinking about it all. I mean, imagine, I doubt they'd ever do this, just because I think it would go against them trying to promote the game. But I'm just imagining these like cameras all across the mansion that are just getting into the real life drama. Like, oh my God, there's some beef between these guys off screen. Look at this. It's 24-hour camera footage. You're
seeing them getting into like fist fights.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah. No, I think, one thing I do appreciate about our community of content creators is that they generally get along quite well. Like,
yes,
there's beef, yes, but most people are able to sort of put that aside, come around and play nicely at the table together. And I think that's really good for everyone. I think that's good for the creators. I think that's good for the community. I think it makes the community look good in front of other communities. Because if there's one thing that old school like absolutely destroys other communities in, it's our content. And having a good face of that content, faces like Settled, like Soup, that's really good for everybody here.
Yeah. And we are blessed to have one like very overwhelmingly positive community, and a lot of that is because of just our age. I mean, we're all entering our 30s. I've just entered my 30s.
Yeah,
And
we're old and can't be bothered.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like we've just lived life longer, and we're not a bunch of 17 to 22-year-olds all just still getting out of our youth and just ruthlessly bullying each other and whatever else. It just feels like there's a lot more maturity in contrast to like other games like Fortnite or whatever else.
Oh, for sure. And even how like the YouTube meta has changed, where now it's okay that you take sponsorships. Like once upon a time, you were looked down for taking sponsorships.
Big time.
And I think you can still like, I don't think every sponsorship is equal. There's probably some not great ones out there, right? But like, the community being able to say to a content creator, like, hey, it's okay for you to like make a career out of this, so you provide us more content. Like, I think that's just overall quite healthy.
It's good. Yep. Let's touch on player development dynamic in the game and how it's evolved. So you're gonna have to go into that.
I'll have to expand on what that means. I don't really know where I was 100% going with this, but it's just a conversation that I've seen pop up here and there about people looking back at 2013 old school and looking at those polls. If you remember those polls from back then, they look pretty grim. I'm not going to lie. And this is more just something to talk about as like how our relationship with Jagex works and how it's developed over time. If you look back in 2013, there was a very different perspective from the players about this game. I mean, only in the previous year to that, we had gotten, Squeal of Fortune, we had gotten Evolution of Content again, Combat.
You really, it sounds like you actually have some affinity for Evolution of Combat. Yeah.
Okay,
now I'm about to say content. Oh God.
so no, I won't go on that tangent. But I know it's clearly something that's on my mind. So when Jagex offered us players a version of 2007, a lot of us jumped on board, of course, because we had felt really burned by Jagex, felt like they had already gone some years of developing just not great content, and had kind of actively worked against the best interests of the game. So when you look at the community from back then, and if you were to somehow, find their old Reddit threads or old forum threads, you would find just a very jaded community who is extremely protective about everything. And I know it's very easy to vilify that and to laugh at, polls to change a left click 2 pixels to the left, fail, right?
Yeah.
I know it's very easy to laugh at that, but at the time, it was very real that almost anything Jagex touched would eventually spiral out of control and end up with Jagex holding the reins again and crashing the game as they had done before. And so we were very cagey at the time. We were very protective. And I think to some degree, we were quite justifiably so. It required years of Jagex communicating and providing, relatively decent content and talking with the players to slowly dig ourselves out of that hole. This is, especially if you look back then, and I really do miss having the weekly Q&A streams, but that was one of the ways in which Jagex came out as people instead of just developers. Because before then, you did not really see JMods. You didn't really speak to JMods. They would have their official news post once a week, And that was how you knew what was in their minds. With Old School, almost out of necessity, they had to change tactics. And I don't want to take this as like take away credit. Like this is, Matt K, Mod Ash. Sure, we'll throw Mod Reach in there as well. John C, especially in the early years, Ronan. Like it was almost out of necessity that they had to talk to us because they had to earn our trust and they had to communicate essentially what they wanted to do and why they were doing it for us to feel comfortable to proceed. And it was, again, in a way, it was out of necessity that they did this, but also like they're real humans. They're generally good people, right? They also did this because they wanted to. And so that was one of the things that really kicked off what I would call the player-developer relationship of Old School. Because I think if there's one strength that this game has, it's that we have this unprecedented eye behind the screen of what development occurs. And we have this unprecedented level of interaction with Jagex, which some years is better and some years is worse. But we're very lucky to have it as we do.
Yeah, no, full agreement. Because I only play Old School RuneScape as my only game, really, I forget how few games have even close to the system that we have.
Yeah.
I mean, we really do control this. I mean, and I'm, just speaking for myself, I mean, even as a content creator, like I even feel like I have a decent amount of sway. So if I have a take or something, like if I'm reading a blog post, I genuinely feel like I could share an opinion and it gets heard. I mean, I will be doing a live ramble on my stream and I'll have Mod Goblin pop in. He's the one that wrote the blog post. I mean, that's insane to think that, and I'm not the only one, I'm speaking for myself, but it's like so many people can go on Twitter and go on Reddit and really make an impact and to how this game gets designed. And it's just amazing to see.
Yeah, no, I think it's, as you mentioned, like it's really cool. You can post a suggestion to Reddit and so a JMod is going to read it. Yep. They're not always going to respond to everything, mind you. But everything that you say is read for the most part.
Yep.
And I think that matters a lot because when we've talked on this cast already about some of the more controversial things that have happened even in Old School's life, like partnerships and MTX survey. I think it's really important to always be able to sort of come back to earth and be able to interact as a human again with these human developers. And I think that's overall healthy. If you look, again, kind of going back to the early days, we were so protective about things and it required Jagex to build that trust again with the players for us to be able to trust them with updates. I mean, have you ever heard of the controversy of Aaron the Duck?
No.
I'm trying to pull that up right now. Oh gosh. Yeah, Aaron, there we go. I'm just going to link you this wiki page right here.
Okay.
Now this duck was like a reference to a streamer or something like that.
Yeah. Okay. I know a little bit of this, but I want to hear your.
Okay, so like the general point is like Jagex put this duck in, which is a reference to a streamer in Falador Park, and the players absolutely freaked out over it. This was early 2014, so again, very much in that protective era, where Jagex couldn't really do anything without the players knowing about it and knowing a lot of the specifics of what was going on. And so there was such a drama that the duck was eventually removed. Aaron's no longer with us. But it just goes to show, again, that trust still had to be built. And it took quite some time. I don't think that our relationship with the developers was the healthiest in that sense at that time, where it was almost like there was such a low threshold for destruction and vitriol and hatred towards the developers because over almost anything that they could do. And I think we're in a much better position nowadays where we have just a lot more tame conversations with the developers. And the developers, in turn, have earned enough trust that they also have a level of control over the game that they've never seen before. There is always a question of how much control in the hands of Jagex is too much, because nowadays they tend to pull fairly high level concepts, then go in and flesh out the details on their own. For example, they pulled Varlamore, say part one. They pulled some of the bigger pieces of content, like the Colosseum. But then all the gaps in between was all determined by them. Like, I'm sure there's some metas that were unintentionally changed just by the introduction of Varlamore that weren't pulled. So it's always a question of like, how granular should a poll be? How much level of control should the players be willing to relinquish to Jagex versus, how much needs to be, polled in depth to us?
Yeah, no, it's interesting to see how different things have gotten. In fact, what are your thoughts on the team being a little less? I don't know. It feels like every single possible thing used to be pulled 10 years ago, and nowadays it really is just broader things. And I feel like I don't actually see much backlash, but we do see quote unquote integrity change or quote unquote quality of life change, where they will say in the blog post, this is something we're not pulling because we deem it to be something that needs to be fixed, or we're going to do this because we see it as a healthy step in the right direction. And maybe it's just because so many of those quote unquote purists from back in the day that were kind of gatekeeping, and like you said, for good reason back then, the environment was way different. Just just our distrust in the team. But you don't really see it these days because so many players have either just released their grip on it or feel like, it's not even worth it. Everything's going to pass anyway. And I'm not even going to take a stance on this because it just feels inevitable that things will pass. Do you feel like it's what they've done, the I guess, power that they've taken into their own hands to change the game has been a healthy thing? Do you feel like they've overstepped in any regard?
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic question. And I think it really depends on, there's lots of little things one could point to that Jagex just doesn't really clearly communicate. They just kind of start doing a bunch of little changes on their own. You don't really talk to the players about it, and it ends up being a bit of a problem. And I think for the most part, they're pretty good about handling it. But things certainly do slip through the cracks, or things get integrity changed when it feels very inappropriate to do so. Now, integrity changes, that's a term that came around as a reaction, if I recall correctly, as a reaction to a couple different things that were a little too off. Nightmare Zone, 6 hours. Splashing, 6 hours. Zalra and Skeletal Wyverns having insane drop tables. Where it was like, there is no way that you could pull these things out of the game. You cannot get 75% of players to agree to make less money or to make less XP, right? That's just never going to happen. So integrity changes came around a time when Jagex kind of hit a bit of a breaking point where they realized some things needed to be changed for the overall health of the game, but that the players are not going to say no to power, even if it's in the overall game's best interests to restrain some of that power. And so integrity changes are used, I would say for the most part, they're used well. Like they're, bug fixes, that's pretty straightforward. Well, maybe it's not. Sometimes it's straightforward. Some things are just released into the game too powerful. Surge potions being usable in PvP is a recent example. It's like, I don't know how that passed a poll. Players must have been voting blind. I no idea. Right? So I think for the most part, they do a pretty good job. But there's also things that do slip through the cracks, which I do feel like should have had more attention paid to them, or should have been a conversation with players. For example, I don't know if we'll get into stackable clues too much here, but I felt really uncomfortable that Jagex had introduced the 1 hour drop timer just completely on their own. They're just like, yeah, we're just going to do this now.
Yeah.
And then, months pass before they realize, hey, wait, these have been abused for months. Should we do something about it? And no, they didn't. And then a year passes, at which point everyone's just clamoring for a change to something. At which point now we're getting this hybrid system of both stackable clues and 1 hour drop timers. So it's like, man, you integrity changed in a problem that you then refused to fix for a year and accelerated the problem. And now the solution is just accepting the problem. It's like, that does not feel like an appropriate way to go about development.
Not at all. I'm with you there. Yeah, that was a whole mess, and it's one of those things I've had to let go. Just like, okay, like,
yeah, I'm the same way. Yeah, like, and as well as how they polled, how they repolled it. Like they repolled it as, should we remove the 1 hour drop timer, which then would need 70% of votes to be able to actually remove it. Something that the integrity changed in, like that. That was crazy to me. Now, that said, players overwhelmingly voted to keep it. So if you switch the poll the other way, the outcome would have been the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, what we are getting is what was always going to happen. But it's just like, man, I just feel like you are polling it with a specific narrative in mind.
Yeah, it was. I don't even think it was necessarily the polling. It was just the fact that if you bring anything into the game that makes things vastly easier and vastly quicker and vastly more convenient in a lot of ways, and then leave it in the game for a year, nobody's going to want to have it taken out.
Exactly.
I mean, we could just imagine just some really game-breaking rune crafting bug that comes into the game where, looks like you can just have, 3 inventories of essence somehow. I'm just making up something, but like now you can go to the altar with 3 times the amount of essence and with this bug, and imagine they just don't touch it for a year. Yeah. And everyone's just abusing it. Everyone's getting crazy XP. You're going to get to the point where a year later, okay, yes, this was a horrible thing to introduce into the game for balance reasons. And now everyone's gotten addicted to it. So, we may as well keep it. And so it's on Jagex for having left it in the game for so long.
Yeah. And again, this was... Yeah. No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, it's not really the players to blame for it. And in fact, like there is an argument too, like maybe it is for the best that it sticks in there. I mean, I disagree with it, but I'm not every other player. So like some players just really they think it's a more fun way to go about the game is to have these juggling systems. But
no, I think, the specific examples that you've brought up of like things being in the game for a year, like that was 6 hour Nightmare Zone. That was 6 hour splashing. Mm-hmm. That was these crazy drop tables. They stayed in the game for a long time, to the point where people were saying, like, it's in the game, it's done its damage, we can never go back. And now this is like 2015. And clearly, 10 years later, I can say the integrity changes. I'm glad that we had them in 2015. They weren't too late. We're 10 years further into the game, right? So I'm always a big fan. I'm a big fan of the general idea of like the summer sweep up that we're getting, or a project rebalance where we take a hard look at some of these things that have caused problems throughout the years and say, okay, something should have been done at some point about this. It wasn't, but we're going to change it now. We're going to make the difference now because this is going to pay dividends in the next decade that this game is going to be around.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are your general thoughts on sort of like, I know, I remember listening to older casts of yours, and you used to talk a lot more about game integrity at the time. And now I know you're quite explicit about the fact that like you're a lot more laid back about it. So what's your take on game integrity?
Yeah, I definitely have become much more relaxed on it, mainly because Oh man, I just got a sandwich lady right then, and it was a baguette.
Man.
It was just a normal one. I don't know if you saw. I actually got a stale baguette on my birthday. There was a
Oh, no way.
yeah, it was like
Congratulations.
just a few days ago. Yeah, it was crazy. It's like
That's awesome.
first hour of the 30-hour stream, just pulled a stale baguette.
No
I'm like,
way.
okay,
Happy
totally
birthday.
totally butchered the luck for the rest of the day. I went to Barrows, did like 60 chests without anything. So
No way.
it just yeah, spoon the baguette though. But yeah, I mean, I think because you have been consuming my content for years now, you've definitely seen the shift of just taking a different approach to the game. And I think some of the time, because there's nothing necessarily objective about the game, like you can't be like, this is right for the game. Like the way I think about the game is the right way to take it. It's like, this is a video game. And you have to take a more just neutral stance to things. And you at least for me, I went on this, whole, I guess, mentality shift journey of thinking, okay, like maybe the way I perceive the game is not how most people want to see the game, but most people. And I was in a different position where, okay, I'm playing this game as my job. I have so much time throughout my day to be playing this game. And the way I see the game is way different than the average player who's working a 9 to 5, has a partner, has a kid, has anything else. And this game is evolving. I mean, do we really want to be back in the olden days of, where, I don't know, where Slayer's only 15K an hour? I mean, yeah, I think there still is an argument for it, 100%. I mean, that's why I do remain quite, I don't know, quite steady in my beliefs of like, don't just raise XP rates for no reason. There's no reason for that. And so a lot of the things I have remained quite stable on. I still am very much against something like the Scar Essence coming into the game. I was against stackable clues ever coming into the game, but then I became an advocate for, okay, just give us the stackable clues, because I wanted to get rid of this hour timer, because I felt like the hour timer is just kind of an eyesore and just really doesn't feel super intuitive to the game.
Yeah.
And so there's little stances on that. I was also a big like advocate for having weapons, having best in slot weapons have some sort of charge system to it, because we cannot be having items coming into the game that are 40% better than the second best in slot. Like, this is out of control. We don't need to make these massive leaps. And I loved the system originally of the arc light, for example. Like, this is the best in slot weapon for a demon, and it comes at a cost, which is these ancient shards, which are kind of hard to come by. And so now you pick and choose when you're going to use this. And the same thing with the scythe. The scythe came out. You got to pick and choose when you're going to use this best in slot weapon. And I loved that. I love that dynamic. But I was never for the inconvenience of it all. I wanted things to be maximally convenient. I wanted it to make the most sense. I wanted there to be as little hurdles as possible, but I wanted there to be a cost associated with it. And so I still hold all these ideas, but I'm definitely not just clamoring on about it, ramble after ramble. I mean, there still are my thoughts on it, but I feel like a lot of the way people see my thoughts are actually more advocating toward easy scape. At least some people that haven't completely grappled with my arguments. Like me proposing, okay, literally double the purple rate at Chambers. Like I've been that extreme with it, where I'm just like, that's a very simplified thing. I think, changing some of the scroll rates and just making purples much more common. Same thing with Nightmare. I won't go into that in this episode.
Yeah.
But like, it feels like I just want the game to feel like you can make progress, and there's no reason for things to be incredibly masochistic. I mean, Raids 1 came out with insane drop rates because it was the only piece of content, and they wanted this to have a ton of hours sunken into it by their player base. But we have so much goddamn content now. We don't need to be doing that. So integrity-wise, I still hold on to my values on a lot of things. In fact, one of the actual changes of mind I had was, I remember they were proposing Partner Slayer and reintroducing it into the game. And I just remember having a ramble where I was like, we got to let Iron Man be able to have this. Like, why not? Why not? And then it was only, I think, a week later where I was kind of like revising how I thought about it. I'm like, you know what? I really should take a step back and just think about, where do you draw the line with Iron Man? I wouldn't say necessarily that Partner Slayer would have had any serious negative like integrity change to the Iron Man meta, but then again, maybe it is for the best that they keep it a solo game mode like it was intended. So yeah, all that to say, I don't know if it was anything specific on your end that you remember me shifting my view on. I would be actually curious to hear if there was anything I didn't mention.
Yeah, I don't know. It's more like a general gist of just kind of how you've looked at the game that I was thinking of. Nothing particular specific. But, one of the questions that always comes up whenever we talk about nerfing things or buffing things is like, especially if you're not in the target audience for an update, how much should you care about what other players are doing? Like if you're maxed, you have a maxed iron. Let's say you weren't playing your baby iron. Do you care that agility XP rates go up to 150k?
Yeah, I do care.
Okay, why?
So with XP, with XP rates, the way I see the game is like there can be a slow, very, very slow increase of XP rates, but that does not need to be necessary. I'll bring up one example, just agility, because you bring it up. There was a change a year or a year and a half ago or something where they just kind of just buffed agility rooftop rates, but there was a reason for it.
Yeah.
And people were arguing. There was a lot of high-level people that were really butthurt about already being changed from 62.5k to 70k overnight.
Yeah.
And the way I saw it was they had to balance the progression of each new rooftop course to fit that. And it made sense for this to be buffed up to, I believe it's 70k. It might have actually, was it just 67k or something? Maybe, I think it was 70k. I could be wrong on that number. But they buffed it, by almost 10% or something, or a little bit more. And it was fine for me because I understood the broader perspective of it, of rebalancing it. So and so there wasn't a massive leap from Sepulcher from everything else as well. It just felt like it was a rebalancing of it. And so I think it would be inappropriate to just be like, okay, you know what? We're just going to across the board make agility double, but we're going to double it everywhere. So now it's just a twice as fast skill because people don't like agility. In my opinion, that's the absolutely wrong way to go about it. What is the right way to go about it is to make agility fun. And how do you do that? You introduce things that are the antithesis of fucking rooftop courses. Those are not fun in the slightest. Don't get me wrong. There is a place for them. Some people enjoy the very, very chill nature of them. And that is 100% valid, and to keep that in the game. But what you really need to do is introduce fun and approachable pieces of content that, and this is my philosophy on it, that really lean into rhythm and really lean into just flow and getting rid of any annoyances with skilling. I feel like skilling across the board, especially with gathering, it's like the more you want to gain XP, like if you want to get a high XP rate, you got to go down this incredibly cringe masochistic route of learning how to tick manipulate, learning how to fucking use a knife and log every 3 ticks, out of control. Just, dude, what are we doing? It's 2025, middle of 2025. And we still have this weird gatekeepiness of like, it's either you do motherload mine or you learn how to just break your wrist. It's just like that. Like those are the two options. It feels like that. They've obviously introduced some other things, but going and just saying, I mean, this is the reason why I'm highly advocating for a Gnome cube and highly advocating for rhythm and new ways to train agility and new ways to train mining and different mining methods that can be introduced that really bridge the gap between complete and utter degeneracy, what a lot of people imagine as 3-tick 4G. Like they do not want to be that, virgin that's mining in the quarry, like people will just resist it. And there's good reason to. I mean, even me as a player who loves quote unquote tick manipulation. I don't like breaking my wrist. I like the flow of it. I resist 3-tick 4G. I think it becomes an absolute just nightmare after
I can't
20
stand
minutes.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's because of wrist pain. It's like if you were to get rid of the knife log aspect of it and just be able to be in a nice flow of clicking every 3 ticks and even have something that can disintegrate your ore for you so you don't have to drop 2 pieces of granite every single cycle as well, then we're talking. Like now we're cooking. Now we can have that, and it's a more simplistic thing. We could have an introduced like a new mining method that maybe has some extra elements, maybe some falling boulders that are happening or something. But what we really need is that, what did I say? It was like some tweet I made about like the satisfaction of predictable resource extraction. There is something so appealing about clicking on something and anticipating you extracting the resource. And the opposite of that is clicking on a Wintertodt brazier and waiting 4 seconds for anything to start happening.
Okay, you know what? I'm gonna let's get into skilling in a little bit.
Okay.
But I'm purposely gonna play a little bit coy here, play a little bit devil's advocate, because I agree with pretty much everything you just said. But going back to this scenario, you have 99 agility. Let's say you have 200 mil agility.
Mm-hmm.
Why does it matter to you that someone else is getting 150k XP now?
Because there is a reality of devaluement. And as much as people want to resist that and think it's gatekeepy, it's just what this game is built upon. This game is built upon your achievements mattering, your time having mattered. And it goes with every aspect of the game. So skilling is probably the easiest to track. If you've maxed, you know, you could just ask the question, why does it matter if somebody maxes in a third of the time now, just overnight? We've now changed it, so maxing is now a third of the time. Well, that sucks because you want to show off your achievement, and your achievement meant something, the amount of time you spent with this and whatever else. And the same thing goes with PVM. I mean, that's the reason why some people are so resistant to some of the things I've advocated for, with like speeding up purples and speeding up certain pieces of content that are just nightmarishly slow, no pun intended. But like, it's just, people like to have done something that doesn't get devalued, or else if we are going to keep going down the route, and the devs are very understanding of this too. I talked to Mod Kieran, and he's very much like moderate with his views, and he's like, hey, like, we do have to be extremely careful when it comes to just devaluing people's grinds, because as soon as you lose that trust, people will just, you know, wait for something to get buffed inevitably, because it almost feels inevitable now. And yeah, so I feel like I still haven't quite put my finger on what you're asking. I keep kind of circling around about it, but like,
no, I really like this. I think you've illustrated it really well. Because I remember, like, even going back to the cast you had with Matt K, you know, one of the questions that he put forth is, you know, why should you care that others bought? Or why should you care that others real world trade? His solution being just allow it all. And I think the only answer that you can really come up with is that game integrity matters to you. As much as we meme about it, devaluation does matter to us. How our achievements look relative to others does matter to us. We're social creatures, right? This is very much built into your genes, and it's important not to get obsessive about it. But celebrating your achievements, in part, is due to the ability to look at others and compare yourselves, ideally in a positive manner, to what others do. You know, can you imagine, first off, how many players would play this game if they were the only player that played it? How many players would grind to 99 magic if they weren't in a social context that promotes this idea of achievement and celebrates achievement and promotes a certain degree of implicit competition, where you are thinking all the time, like, I want to get ahead. Not necessarily like I want to put others behind, but I want to better my character, better myself in a sense. I think it's memed to death the idea of, sort of pulling up the ladder behind you, or, wanting others to suffer. And therefore, I think it's a little bit memed to death that people don't want you to care about what others are doing in this game, when I think it really does matter a lot.
Yeah.
And I think it's dangerous to get obsessive about it. I think if you're saying you can never have that extra 500 XP an hour, right? I think if you're saying that, like, you're being a little too obsessive. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of push back on the general notion that you're not allowed to care about game integrity, or you're not allowed to care about what others do. It's okay. It's perfectly okay.
Yeah, and in fact, it's necessary for a thriving game that's healthy to
Yes.
and again, there's nuance to this. Like, for example, and it's good to just have the conversations. I mean, I know it's been memed to death, the Gnome Cube that I keep advocating for. Luckily, I feel like the devs are slowly kind of like, okay, we can introduce a Jim's wet cloth and just kind of gauge how the players like it. And all I've seen on Reddit is a universal acceptance of this is great. Yeah. Now, it's only available in one location, and it's not exactly what I would have wanted. You still have to do some clicking on the ground before you actually click the rocks and stuff. But like, it's, something about like the devaluement was like, the nuance of it, I should say, is me advocating for getting rid of knife log. And some people would say, hey, like, I know there's people that have grinded at 200 mil mining, and they don't want that to be devalued. And their devaluement will have come in how much extra clicking they had to do throughout OWL.
Yep.
And so there is that argument to be had. But what you have to do is you have to, kind of line it all up with, okay, what matters in the grand scheme of things? Like, do we want to endlessly, and I try to see a more long-term approach of this game. Like, how do we want to see the game in 5 years? How do we want to see the game in 10 years? Do we want to, in 10 years from now, be knife logging rocks still? Like, do we in 10 years from now still want a T-bow to be 500 hours to get? Yeah. And there's like just things like that where, like, I try to see the game in the future of, and it was the same thing with right-click pickpocketing. It's like, really, in 5 years, are we still going to be right-click fucking pickpocketing these buyers? Like, can we rip the Band-Aid off already?
Yeah.
And so there always is, some nuance to it, and we have to figure out what the best way to go about it is. Do you want to completely eliminate it? Because, I'm imagining there's probably people that just don't want to click anything in their inventory. Why even have a Gnome Cube? Just get rid of it entirely and just click the rocks. Yeah. And then maybe that gets rid of, maybe that removes some of the element of enjoyment or the element of flow or something that's actually of value. And so I think there's always that argument to be had. But yeah, the overall just blanket statement of like, quit caring about how others play the game, quit caring about, you're pulling up the ladder behind you, like the thing that you brought up. It's like, it's not that at all. It's keeping the game fun, removing unnecessary hurdles that just kind of make the game unfun, and then also focusing on keeping people's achievements valued in a way. I don't know,
still showing them respect. Yeah. No, I don't really have a very particularly strong opinion on the Gnome Cube idea. I like that they tried the Jim's wet rig. I think it's cool that they introduced it within a bit of a safe context. Like, if they entered that in, except you could use it everywhere, I would be like, okay, hold on. Like, I didn't necessarily agree to this. I got to think about this before you do that. But I just don't really enjoy a lot of tick manipulation methods anyway. I'm very much on the side of I like the experiences. It's probably become a bit generic and overstated, but Hallowed Sepulchre. I love that feels like it's utilizing the game mechanics as intended, whereas a lot of tech manipulation is really weird. I don't know what I'm doing with this knife and log while I'm mining granite. Like, what the heck am I doing? Why am I partially grinding this herb or whatever? I like these activities like Sepulchre that are still highly engaging and require thought. Maybe not as rhythmic, which is something that you could say feels like it's missing, but that feels like it's a natural use of the game's mechanics.
going back to your point about Sepulchre, I mean, there is definitely rhythm to it. It's not the same basic rhythm that you're going to be following every 10 ticks or whatever, just repeats. But the other thing is, like, you're not breaking your wrist. Like, that's just, that is, believe it or not, for some, I feel like people quite haven't totally wrapped their heads around, like, there are genuine concerns about your wrist doing high ATM methods in this game. That is a very real thing, and people don't want to deal with it. So that's just so important. It's just stay away from that. But so you know what? I do want to tie this in because sailing is a brand new skill that's going to be coming in later this year. And it's going to be interesting because on one hand, we have this completely fresh slate to be able to balance it however we want and to maybe even go against some of the old philosophies. I feel like there definitely is more of a approach that I've heard from the devs that they do want to kind of stick with the old school philosophy, which I do think is healthy and probably safer. But what are your thoughts on sailing? And you've been a huge part of it. You've, for those that don't know, I mean, you've been working with the devs on sailing, and it's just, you've definitely had a lot of your input in it. And some things obviously you can't share. Some things obviously a lot more has come to light since the alpha and everything else. And JMods have talked about the skill. So I want to hear your overall thoughts. Maybe some of the things that you've heard from the community on the negative side and on the positive side, and just where you're at right now.
Yeah. So just to be very explicit on like what I've done with sailing is, of course, they've asked for some input for sure. And especially in the earlier days, that was probably seen as quite valuable. And to the point where they asked me to edit the videos for the sailing refinement period. Like there were 4 or 5 different videos that they wanted, each going over like this different aspect of sailing that they wanted to talk about, whether it was, the different training methods or how it fits into the game lore-wise or how navigation works. So I did a lot of that work. Now, I haven't done any contracts for them in quite some time, actually. Not since January 2024. That's for various reasons. The primary one being I'm very busy IRL. But I've still obviously kept up to date. I still get to see what they do. They'll still ask for opinions every once in a while. And so what's my general take on sailing? I mean, if it wasn't positive by this point, I mean, that would be very harrowing indeed. So, I mean, I'm a big fan of the overall concept. I really do think that it could work as old school's first new skill. I look forward to being on the water. I think from a very basic thematic point of view, I think sailing works really well. It's very simple. You are still in the RuneScape world. You are still doing very normal things, but you can sail a boat. You're on the same land as you're not on the same land. You're in the same globe as you were before. You're just on the water instead.
Yep.
I think from a very basic thematic point, that works. Whereas I look at shamanism, and I really did not like some of the themes that they were going with. It being a mix of both the production and gathering skill felt to me like that was to the detriment of our other gathering skills that could be feeding into it. I felt that its theme was muddled in the fact that it wanted to upgrade weapons, which, like, how does that work with the theme of shamanism? I don't know, this goofy magic makes it work. Whereas, like, invention is a lot clearer of a theme with the mechanics. Like, you are inventing new weapons, or you're inventing new attachments for your weapons or whatever. So I felt that theme of shamanism was not really gelling well with me. And the thing that sold players on shamanism was the very thing that I didn't really want from it, which is you could upgrade weapons. Whereas for me, I was like, well, if you're going to upgrade weapons, I mean, where does that leave our current skills? Like, smithing. Like, oh man, you can upgrade your Bandos chestplate to a Bandos chestplate E with shamanism. And you can also smith rune plate bodies with smithing. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then taming, I don't know. I feel like people probably beat taming to death, but just wasn't my wasn't my first choice. So I was very much sold on sailing from the start. Where is it at? It's been on a long journey, and I think that I don't think anyone quite expected it to take this long, because there is a lot of technical work that had to be done. They were very, very quiet for the first year of development, and it's crazy to say that we're over a year of development in, because that's just how it is. But they're very quiet after that refinement period, because figuring out the technical work required is crazy to try and pull off. But now we're here that we've actually seen and played in alpha, and my general thoughts, I liked most of it. The basic mechanics are good. Some of the activities, being on the water was a little bit dull, and I made some suggestions like, oh, maybe there's other things on the water you can do, or there's a treasure chest that you can go slide by and pull up, and obviously different boat speeds. That's going to be in the future. I'm pretty sure I've always been aware of that. And what I think that sailing has really done well is aesthetically been quite pristine. I think the art team has absolutely killed it with making it fit into the world. There's a couple things I could point fingers at, like the water is a little bit static. That's a little bit boring. But overall, I was quite pleased with that.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on, I mean, just going on the aesthetics? Because one of the things that I know makes a game feel so much better is visuals, like animations, things like this.
Yes.
Like it actually does add so much. It's not just, oh, this is just an extra thing as just something extra we don't actually need. It's not going to actually cause any more fun in the game if it's not actual gameplay. But man, how much it would do to the skill, the overall feel, if one, the water looked like water to some extent. It doesn't need to be crazy, but not just a blue carpet that's completely static.
Yeah.
And then just ripples, ripples behind your boat, some sort of wave that's going, so it feels like you're drifting in the water. It feels like there's some speed going.
Totally.
That goes, oh my God, the lengths that goes to make it feel like you want to go on the water. Because man, when you're just there and it's like you're on a magic carpet, basically going 1.5 tiles per tick.
You're on this ice rink, right?
Yeah, it just didn't feel good to me.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point that you bring up. That gameplay feel is not just the mechanics. It is how the world reacts to you, how the animations work, how things move. That all plays very tightly into gameplay feel. And I don't know if you recall, in some of the early footage they showed off, they had the blue carpet, except it was moving up and down. I thought that looked pretty neat. Do you recall that?
Do you have a visual? I would love to see it. I know
Gosh,
my audience would.
yeah.
I don't know if you can find it or not.
Man, I don't know where I would search.
Was it in one of the blogs, or was it just something they showed off on a Q&A at one point? Or
I remember them showing off. They were showing off one of the very early tech demos. Here, I'm just going to search up sailing OSRS.
While you're searching, I'll I want to just say, I mean, I don't think, at least what I'm trying to imagine with the water going up and down, I mean, it has to feel somewhat natural, and I doubt that alone would, and I'm not claiming you would think that alone would solve anything, but like, I don't know what their plan is with the HD going forward, if that's going to include the water animation, making it so like there's a little bit of waves coming up on shore, just something very basic, and then
it's the footage is not great in here. I think they were recording on the default old school client, like the old Java one, right? So because that was their testing environment, at least at the time.
Okay, this actually isn't as bad as I had been.
Right? I think just the boat alone moving, like swaying back and forth, I think that looks great. Now the thing is, I don't know how technically possible this is. And if you look closely at the footage, you'll notice that like crates in the water, rocks in the water aren't moving up and down.
Yeah.
I suppose maybe rocks shouldn't, crates aren't though. So like I don't know how feasible this actually is as a final product, but I do think that we should make a big distinction between it looking good in the natural client and it looking good in HD. Because I bet that no matter what, it's going to look fantastic in HD. I almost have like zero worries about that. I think they're going to smash it no matter what they do. But I do want it to look more than just a plain static blue carpet in the default client setting, right?
I'm with you. I think I don't know if there's anybody that holds the sentiment like, no, we need to keep this blue carpet forever because this is old school. I genuinely have not heard of anybody making that argument that they want to keep that. Maybe there's some people that haven't been vocal about that and they do want to see that kept. But for me, I'm just thinking because we're introducing sailing, I just feel like it's an essential part to change how water looks. And I don't think that's going to be I don't think people are going to be rioting in Falador over them changing the blue carpet. I don't think this has ever been something that people are like, wow, the blue carpet is just so great to this game. I could be wrong. I would love to hear some backlash on it and prove me wrong on that.
Yeah, well, here, let me play devil's advocate a little bit. You are a player. You haven't played RuneScape since 2009. So you're an old man. You come back, you hear about this old school RuneScape. You come back and you log in and you log into Lumbridge and you walk across the bridge, but the water looks completely different. How do you feel?
Genuinely, I would not feel. I would honestly. I feel like this is me, maybe kind of overgeneralizing. I feel like many people that do come back to the game actually have some nostalgia for the OG like 2009 graphics. Like,
oh yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
The kind of like where everything kind of was shifting, and they were totally okay with it because they were a kid, and they're like, "Oh, I kind of like this. I kind of like the HD. I kind of want it to go HD." And I think
I guess.
Yeah. So I don't even think there would be any part of me that would be like, ooh. And let me also just say this. I think there should be a difference between the default and the HD, but I think it should be more of a flat color, potentially something that still has some sort of water-esque feel, but then the HD could have something where like you can almost see the shore going deeper, you know what I mean? Like something where you can kind of see through the water, where the default doesn't have that, for example.
Yeah. Like I think that's a pretty fair take. I just do worry a little bit because even myself, like I love the old art style established in 2004. Like I really do love it, and I would be sorry if that were completely gone. If I were to walk to the shore and it looks like completely different. So there's some sentiment of mine, but it really depends on how they execute it, what it ends up looking like. Because if they were to do this, I'd be like, this looks pretty good. Maybe it could use some further changes just to make it look better. I don't know. It really depends on what they do. But have you tried toggling on 117 HD near the water?
Ooh, yes, I have. Well, one of the things that happens with 117 is that it immediately adds a bunch of glow effects to it. Like it's very, it's very like bright and just
saturated,
overly saturated. But I do actually. Let me pull up. I know for a fact. I think it was the Mr. Mammal cast 4 years ago where I was fishing. Oh my gosh. Fishing.
That's some pretty good knowledge.
Yeah. Mr. Mammal Sae Bae, and I'm just going to pull this up on my end, and in fact, I'll even link it to you. It might have the water may have even potentially changed at this point, but during this cast, you could see like this is the water that I think the default should have, and again, the saturation wouldn't be as intense. Yeah, but this is something where I could get down with being across the board, having something like that because sailing has been introduced. Right. It could even be toned down a little bit more because you do see that little island, the land kind of sinking in. Yeah. I would even be okay with that even being removed and having it just look a little bit more solid. Yeah. But this is what I mean by like good water.
Yeah. Like I think this does look pretty good. We could talk about the nuances of how the texture looks, but in general, I think 117 actually even looks way better than that now.
Mm.
But yeah, like I do like seeing the land go underneath. I think that looks pretty cool. I think having that transition makes a big difference for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if they were to make water look like this across the board, this is again my take on it. If they were to make the water look like this across the board and make it so there's some ripples in the water when you are moving. So just some basic stuff, like when you start picking up speed, there's just a traditional trail that's behind your boat. I don't feel like that would be too complicated to do. It could be, and especially when you're turning your boat, there could be some weird things. But I really feel like it could just be like almost like a graphical thing attached to your boat. So it's not like there's actual water movement going on, but like, and then beyond that is have a ripple in the front of your boat that shows when you're gaining speed. I think that, would be so good. It would be so good to have that.
No, I totally agree. And this is one of the things that's always been, even during the refinement period when I was doing all the videos, it was always a struggle to try and represent a future that you cannot see, or like that you have an idea of what it looks like in your mind, but you're trying to translate that to other people. I found that particularly challenging. And obviously, I was building Creator's Kit at the same time that I was making these videos. It was like, it would be like a 2 or 3 week stretch between each video. And during the first week or so, I would just hammer out another couple updates for Creator's Kit. Not public at that time. It was still just something that I was working with in-house. And just to try and represent a possible future of sailing slightly better. And even so, like, they're not great visuals. I was making do with not great material because all I had was the stuff already in the client. I couldn't make my own animations. I couldn't really make my own models. All this stuff was really challenging to put together. But yeah, that's just to say that what I had in my imagination was really difficult to put into video form and really difficult to translate to players. And so when players were initially quite hesitant, and still plenty of them are, I was less worried because I had a better idea, I think, of what sailing was going to be versus them. I had a bit of advantage of knowing behind the scenes what was happening, as well as being able to visualize just roughly all these different pieces put together. And it's certainly, even to this day, like as you've mentioned, like the alpha wasn't, the water wasn't pretty, but I can still look forward and still see this image of a couple different types of water that I think would look really good that players can't currently see. Like, obviously, I haven't been given any of this information behind the scenes. I can just imagine it, visualize it, maybe a bit easier than some others.
Yeah, it's kind of again, this is like the universal balancing of what Jagex needs to do. Like, they need to cater to all these players that either are very progressive with the game that don't really mind art changing. I mean, we're just talking about art here, but it goes with everything. Yeah, we'll see. But as it currently stands, at least with the alpha, there needs to be some changes to it in my head. And what were your thoughts on draw distance? I feel like that was a big thing that was missing as well. Like, I want seemingly endless draw distance. I mean, I want it to really expand where you can see islands way out there. They don't have to be rendered, obviously, but at least it's in the cache if you have Runelight or whatever else, and you can kind of see what's out there.
Yeah, so there's a couple different components when we talk about draw distance. The first is how much of the world loads, and the other is how many other entities load, or how far entities load off. So for example, if you log into Runelight right now, and you're in the middle of Varrock, you could probably see all the way from the Grand Exchange to the East Bank without loading in a chunk. Versus the number of how far you can see players, that's a lot more limited. That's limited to maybe, I don't know, if I were just to guess, like 20 tiles out from you, right?
Yeah.
Only the players close to you load. And you'll notice that if you're in a busy area, a really busy area, maybe only other players beside you will load, because the game has to transfer information from yourself to the server and from all these other players to the server. And all these other players, all their interactions have to be noted by the server before being translated back to you. So that's the limitation in the number of entities. How far you can see entities, that could probably be tweaked. I don't recall, maybe I'm making up this memory, but I feel like I recall at some point one of the clients, the third-party clients, rendering entities further out. And they actually had to pull it back because it was too much of an advantage in like a PvP scenario when, the competitors were using like the default old school client. So I'm 100% sure it's possible to do that. And I think it'd be very fitting if you're on the water to be able to render other boats further out. It's just a matter of, I don't know if there's actual like full-on engine changes that need to happen to pull that off or not.
Yeah, that would be, because I wasn't even thinking of, rendering other boats outside or even rendering any NPCs. It was just simply,
you just want to look further.
Yeah, I just want to be able to see general things further. But you do have a point. If you could see boats way further out than just, I think it's 15 to 20 tiles or whatever it is for players. I mean, boats surely at least triple that distance. It feels like that would be absolutely necessary. But beyond that, I would even be okay with. Just, it's there's a lot going on, and I think ultimately I wouldn't even know how I feel about it. Like maybe it would be just too much if you're seeing too many boats out there, and maybe I'll be like, ooh, okay, maybe limit it, maybe tone it back a bit. But
no, I definitely think you can't. I mean, one of the advantages that they've already shown off with the alpha is that if there's like boats underneath you, they appear as a shadow. And I actually think that looked pretty good.
Yeah, that was probably the best way to go about it.
Yeah, I think they did it perfectly. And if you looked really closely, you'd even note that it's not like a static shadow. It's an actual, like, if you took the the Z coordinate of the entire boat, they just squashed it. So even the animation of the sail had a shadow to it.
Oh, that's cool.
I thought it was really cool. I really liked that. Now, as you mentioned, like, as I mentioned, if you're trying to render too many players in a small area, it'll only render those closest to you. And I imagine they would have to apply a similar principle to boats, except maybe be a bit more restrictive. But either way, like the boat shadow effect, I think worked quite well in the alpha, because you could only, even if there are boats not on your tile, and there are two other boats on a tile, 10 tiles out, one of them would be a shadow and one of them would be a boat. So at least there is this sort of maximum to the amount of clutter that could be on screen, to the point where I felt it didn't feel very cluttered to me.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it did either. So I think one of the J mods I was talking, maybe it was the Lenny and Husky cast just back in April. Something about they were worried about maybe the render distance. If it's too big, you're just gonna be kind of seeing a bunch of things that they're just not gonna look natural. Like if you're really close to the shore of Catherby, you're just gonna be seeing a bunch of scenic stuff that's just gonna feel very tight and unnatural. But I'm like, I want it. I'm here for it. Like this is old school. Like it's okay. It's already jank. The fact that there was, I mean, it would have been the biggest project of all time, and I'm glad they didn't do it ultimately. But like having spread out islands and lands and made it look a little bit more like spacious, I'm glad they didn't do that. But yeah, I just feel like it's okay. It's okay to have the draw distance super far.
Give people a slider.
And
give people a slider. How many entities you can render? How far?
Yeah, I mean,
entities will render. I feel like that's fine.
Yeah, I think so too. So the other thing I wanted to touch on was XP rates. Now, none of this stuff has been finalized, but initially, Madalena had hinted at 100K kind of being the top range at 99 of what they're aiming for. And I was shocked to hear that. Again, nothing's set in stone, and I'm certain that it won't be that low. I'm certain that they'll, make some adjustments, but really, I mean, I'm okay with it being triple that rate. I'm okay. And again, caveat at 99, the top XP. I'm not saying at level 70, just doing some basic AFK and you're getting 300K. But very, very top, I would love it to be, as fast as Hunter can get. I mean, Hunter, if you're doing Black Chins, you're getting 280K an hour if you're really sweating.
Yeah. I mean, I have a maxed main, and the thing that concerned me the least the entire journey was XP rates. I didn't care. I just it. If I'm enjoying what I'm doing, it matters so little to me how fast it goes. Unless, I don't know, maybe if you actually went less than 20K an hour, maybe I would start to get worried. But if I'm enjoying myself, I don't really mind how fast it's going. I'll just keep doing it until it's finished. Now, that said, a lot of people do care about XP rates, and I can totally understand why you might. Again, it doesn't worry me too much. When Elena said 100K XP an hour, I was like, that was not the last thing I heard. I'd heard values much higher. But I guess this is to say that it's such an easy thing to change. You change one number in the code, in the program of sailing, and all of a sudden it's fixed. It's just such a minor detail. What would I prefer? I don't know. Maybe 200K. I would be okay with that. I wouldn't mind that. But yeah, it's all to say that it's so early to start talking about that. And the issue is that in many ways I do wish Elena had never mentioned it, because now all the sailing conversation is about XP rates and not about is the content good.
Yeah.
Because that matters to me infinitely more.
Yeah, totally. I don't think it sparked too much. I mean, I think at the time for the next 2 weeks, that was being mentioned a lot.
Maybe in select groups for sure.
Yeah. And I do think obviously the content is what is most important. My argument for higher XP rates is truly for the benefit of sailing. I want sailing to be enjoyed. And one of the things that can completely destroy that enjoyment is making the skill 50K an hour maximum at 99. That would make everybody, because like you said, I mean, going back to the agility argument, I mean, you had just, your whole thing was just sort of a hypothetical of, why not have agility be 150K? But genuinely, people would enjoy agility more if it was faster. They just would, because it gets over with quicker. And obviously there's a problem with agility not being as fun, but there is just that aspect of if a skill is faster, it's more enjoyable, you can get it over with quicker. And it just feels like, in contrast with the other skills, it's just, this is a fun skill. This is a fast one. It gets over with quicker. And so the difference, and I'll just make it very extreme, of 50K an hour versus 300K an hour, a 50K an hour skill, people would be bitching about sailing. They would not be enjoying it. And Absolutely. I think it'd be a much healthier route to go down, a faster route. And then this is a special thing that I've brought up. This is a special circumstance, is that we're having our first ever new skill. And I think it's totally acceptable. And my philosophy is that if we ever have a new skill, they need to be fast. And what I mean by fast is, in the range of 200 to 350K an hour. I think somewhere in that sweet spot is what you almost need to do for new skills. It would never be appropriate to have a skill, in my opinion, be 70K an hour max, something like agility on release. That's just absolutely not. And the other thing is people want their max capes back. There are over 50,000 max cape players.
Yeah.
And what you don't want is people, because there will be this natural annoyance of stopping what you're doing. If you're a pet hunter, if you're a clogger, if you're a clue hunter, whatever you're doing, and being like, I can't use this really broken max cape anymore until I've reobtained this. So now I'm already just unconsciously just having negative thoughts towards sailing. And on top of this, now it's going to be really, really slow. And I have a full-time job, and I can't even get back to what I'm doing optimally until I've spent 2 months doing sailing.
Yeah. So here's an interesting thing. I almost think that XP rates are important in almost the social context of I care about XP rates insofar as it is socially important, in that people care about XP rates, and therefore I care about them. I don't care about them myself, really. It's just that to appease the players, I'd be like, yeah, sure, like 200, 300K, whatever. That doesn't really matter to me. The only other thing that like the part about XP rates that I really do care about is just making sure that content is appropriately rewarding for the effort that you put into it.
True.
If your AFK method is 30K an hour, don't make your high APM method 35K. Make it 70K, right? That's like the general gist. I do wonder, because I do agree that people tend to think better of a skill the faster it is. I don't speak to many RS3 players, but do you think they look at skills that are 500K an hour? Do you think they look down on those skills because they have skills that are 1 mil an hour?
That's a good question. I really haven't thought about that. I don't know. What's your thought on that? I mean, what would you have expected me to answer?
Yeah, well, I mean, to be honest, I don't really know. It's just a thought that like the context of other skills being within this certain range therefore makes you perceive a new skill as being better or worse based on where it lies in that range. So if we were to introduce sailing as 300k XP an hour in old school, everyone would look at it really fondly, versus if you introduced sailing at 300k an hour in RS3, people might look at it really poorly, assuming that 300. I don't know what XP rates are on RS3. I'm just kind of spitballing, right?
Yeah, but what you're saying is like if it was released as a really slow skill, because that would be relatively slow in RS3.
Yes. Yeah. It's all just to say that like it's more just a curious point, a hypothetical for me. An interesting thing to think about is how much the context of other skills plays into how we would perceive this new skill.
It's everything. Yeah, it's almost everything. It's the contrast.
Yeah, because I almost wonder, like, if we were still playing with RS Classic XP rates, would we complain about sailing being 50k an hour? It's like, maybe, probably not.
Yeah, no, we wouldn't. It's all. I mean, like if maxing in this game only took 100 hours, if that's always how it was, yeah, holy shit, a skill that took 300 hours or something.
Yeah,
what's going on?
What are you doing, right?
Yeah. You know what? One of the curious points, we don't need to get into this because we already kind of talked about skilling, was I almost need to push back when people bring up the really old school terminology of just APM, like as the only metric of whether a skill needs to be faster or slower is APM. And I know you just use that as like a general term, and it's used very generally of like higher APM, higher VXP. And I'm like, we need to literally just take a huge step back and be like, this is the worst metric to go off of. Like, I understand a very broad, like bluntly, yes, that is the case. You don't want star mining at 0.2 APM to be anything fast. But in my books, it's not just like, okay, the more you're breaking your wrist, the more you're clicking, that's when it is. It's like, we need to just get out of that whole zone and make it so skilling has some sort of skill expression. Like skill expression should be what is dictating XP rates. I think and that's my whole like evolution of, I was about to say content. No, I'm kidding. Evolution of skilling. If we ever did have an evolution of skilling, it would really be to quit dumbing down skilling. Just stop dumbing it down. We don't dumb down PVM. PVM is thriving. Skilling, you can always have methods that everybody can do, but we need to start expanding our scope and making things have some skill expression. And like Sepulchre was a great way to do that, to have some sort of skill expression.
Yeah, so, I want to come back to like forestry in a little bit. Please don't let me forget that.
Okay, I'll even write it down.
Good. Just to kind of go off your point, like, I think like almost effort would be a bit of a better term than APM, because I totally agree. Like, if I'm forced to, fletch darts for every skill at the highest APM, like I think that would just kind of be murder. That's not really the kind of skilling that I really want to push for. But I do think, I think it's really important that you mentioned like putting in some mechanical challenge or cognitive challenge. So mechanical challenge being like, how fast and how accurately can you click? Can you click at the right time? And cognitive challenge being, can you make decisions, or can you plan for different scenarios, and can you make competent decisions in a moment. I think having like different aspects of mechanical and cognitive challenge would be really beneficial for a lot of skills. And I find it really sad that a lot of the skilling methods that we release these days, or at least over the past decade or so, are really mechanically dull and really cognitively dull. There's not much thought yet to put into it. There's not much chase. There's not much of a skill cap to it.
Yep. And we keep stagnating like that. Like every single skill that comes out is just, you learn it instantaneously. There's no skill expression hardly at all. There's obviously little things you can do to improve your XP rates, but there's nothing like, oh man, this was a challenge and this is going to take, a few hours to really get down. It doesn't feel like that often. I mean, I'm bringing up probably the worst example, but Giant's Foundry drops and it's like instantaneously, it's like, okay, well, I know what I'm doing and this is awful and I'm just going to be sitting here. Yeah. And it's just made for babies. Like this is literally made for babies. Like a baby could go do this.
And I think it's probably a tactical decision on the part of Jagex to release activities like that because it's going to have broad appeal. Like, Hallowed Sepulchre, the people who do it tend to really like it, I found. But I do wonder how many people have actually engaged with it. Mm-hmm. Because all the people complaining about agility, I'm betting many of them haven't done it, or maybe it just doesn't suit them. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I do agree. Like I would like to see more engaging skilling methods that aren't just like tick manipulation rhythm, that require some mechanical skill, that require a bit of cognitive effort. Because I think that would be a much better approach to make skilling, for lack of a better term, alive again. It's like, I guess that's something else that we can just kind of dive into a little bit. Like, what do you think are some of the big problems with skilling right now?
Well, the big problem is you're not making any money, and there's a good reason for not making any money, because what you're doing for most skills is complete brain off AFKing something, and you can't have it make money. Yep. Now, let's just imagine a new thieving minigame. This is a really convenient one because thieving is not really a gatherer or a bank standing skill. It's just, okay, we're, I think that and like agility are the two that are kind of outliers. But let's just imagine there's a new thieving thing. I would love to bring up the Cave of Wonders idea that I've brought up so much, but like a new sort of minigame-esque thing that is training thieving and maybe even some trickle agility or whatever. And you have these actual big ticket items to go for. And now you have a skill that you are training a skill and getting these big ticket items. So now it has the element of PVM because there is that RNG factor of getting something really cool. There's so much engagement with it. You can't just be AFKing this. And now you've got best of both worlds where this is a huge money maker, not based on necessarily just getting a shit ton of resources, but now you have these uniques going after it.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. I think the Ring of Endurance for a long time was a huge, that's great. That's great to go for. It's something that actually holds a lot of value. It doesn't anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, we need skilling to come out that is very rewarding, because who would be doing Yama if Yama didn't drop anything? It's just like you need some incentive for that, and skilling never gets it, because what we've seen is like all skilling is like you're just going for 99. Like that is the only reward, is like how fast can this be to get it over with? It's like so backwards. It's like holy crap, we need some other incentive. We need to make money from this. Skilling should make money.
Yeah. I think you bring up two really good points, which I'm going to very clearly separate. In that, like, to make a skill feel valuable, I think it would ideally need one, or ideally both, of the two following things. One, be able to make money with it. In other words, provide something that players are actually looking for, some sort of resource. The other thing is that, and it's something that people don't think about as much, but provide some valuable part of my progression. And this is to say that, when you train smithing, you might be able to make money. You could probably make a lot of money off cannonballs, like a reasonable amount. But what is the reason to chase 99? Or what's even the reason to chase level 80 or level 70? Besides like arbitrary quest requirements or arbitrary achievement diary requirements, which are just like, you just need this level, right? It doesn't feel like smithing has appropriate end goals. I think we're getting a little bit better with this. And now that like some of the, for example, the new oath plate armor, you can smith, you can put it together, right?
Mm-hmm.
It feels like there's a reason to have that level of smithing. But this is not something that we see among a lot of other skills, unfortunately, and we don't see among most of our skills. So I think having valuable unlocks that are worth chasing a high level and having good money making methods, I think those are two very important things.
Yeah.
The other things I'd like to mention that skills are not in great position for is that PVM tends to slowly override whatever skilling you do. It eventually sucks up all the resources for itself that it can sell back to you, which I think that's has been a well-documented problem, and we're probably never going to escape.
There's a but the reason for the problem, and there is an escape to it. The escape is to make genuine skill expression super fun skilling. And that is something we just do not see. We don't see it. So we for a lot of people, they can't even imagine a world where skilling has now been completely revolutionized, where it's almost the feel. I don't want skilling to all have these bosses. That's not what I want. But I want you to go into a skilling encounter, just some sort of skilling thing, and be like, okay, like this is going to be fun. I'm going to be doing this. Yeah. It's going to be rhythmic. It's going to have some elements of potential, I don't know, just excitement. There's some RNG at this spot. There's maybe some
There's a rare
play
to chase.
Yeah. There's like a chase to it. There's fun, and there's skill expression. Like you're learning it as you go, and you're getting better at it, and you're making tons of money because it's actually quite difficult to maintain, but not in a masochistic way, but just like there's some focus to be had, just like
you put work into it.
Yeah. You got to put.
But that's one of the.
Yeah, you got to put energy into it. Yeah, what are you gonna say?
Yeah, so like that's one of the things that, unfortunately, the old school skilling from 2004, never really adapted to, and it's that, when you chop logs, the amount of products that you create, the amount of logs that you produce, is enormous. Like the supply means that there's no value to them, essentially. When the best bow in the game at the time might have been the magic short bow, but you can chop 1,000 magic logs an hour, how is the magic short bow ever going to hold any sort of value?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's a problem that we've just kind of kept going along, just kept trucking along, and not worried about it, to the point where you're not chopping magic logs to make magic short bows anymore. You're just chopping them to sell them, right? Or you're chopping them for experience. It's, as you said, the goal of skilling nowadays is to skill, no longer to get a reward.
Yeah, that is exactly it. I mean, you brought up that idea, and an idea that just came to my head right there was one of the things they've done with Hunter Rumors. Like they released a new salamander, the Teku salamander, and most of the time with any other salamander, you just grab it and now you have a salamander. This is a 1 in 1,000 to get the matured salamander. So now most of the salamanders are just worthless, but you get this special one, this matured one, and it's worth 300K.
Yeah.
Imagine you did the same thing with magic logs, where you'll chop magic trees. First of all, I think there's already some major issues with chopping magic trees. They need to be rebalanced. They're so incredibly slow and painful.
Yeah.
But imagine there was a chance of getting a perfected magic log. And then on top of that, there's also a chance. So it's not like, okay, now you have the perfect log and you have the perfect weapon. No, now you have to get the perfected fletch, and then maybe that's a 1 in 5 or something. So ultimately there's like some RNG to it. Maybe that would be actually a bit fucking sadistic to make it so you finally get the perfect one, and then it's just a matter of RNG.
It's a 1 in 5, just destroy it.
Yeah, but something where there is an RNG element, I think it would be better to go about like just pulling, chopping the perfected magic log. That's very rare, and I think things like that. Like that would be cool. It would also be cool to, one of the things is like you could randomly get gems from mining. You get a diamond here and there. Increase that.
Yeah.
Make it a rare chance to pull an onyx. Can you imagine a one in a 100,000 to just pull an onyx? Like, it doesn't need to be crazy, but add some dragon stones to it. Make some element of RNG to it to keep you excited.
Yeah, and I don't even think RNG is the only way you could do it. I think a summary you could take away from this conversation that we've had about skilling is that making it so that there's some sort of effort to be able to get the final product. What one post that I made, oh my goodness, this must be years ago now, was this idea of the components model, which is essentially kind of what we do in some aspects here and there. Whereas, like, you get different components from different activities. You get your components from PVM to make this high level item, but then you get a similar component from skilling to be able to make this item. And now, they've kind of done this to some degree with different weapons and armor throughout the game. But part of the pitch that I made was that if you want the process of, say, smithing this new sword to be valuable, to provide some sort of worth to your skill, you have to make it an actual process. If you can take these components to an anvil and in one tick create your final product, that process of smithing is never going to be any value. You're never going to take these things to the anvil yourself, really, and try to make money off of this process. However, let's say that you had to take these pieces of metal. You had to go to the city of Camtorum and you melt it down there. And then you talk to Thurgo to learn this new technique of smithing this thing. And then you take it to the volcano in the northern end of the wilderness and melt it down further. And then you take it to the great anvil of Lovacane and you hammer it down there. Now, obviously, that would probably take a little bit of time to do. But that also means that whatever you do, you could actually make a profit off of doing this because you're the one putting in the effort of smithing it. You're the one taking that, I don't know, let's say 10 minutes to do it. You could turn around and now sell that and gain, 50K per item of people of something that other people don't want to do.
Yeah, I mean, actually, it's funny because they kind of already did that low key with the Desert Treasure 2 rings. There was, yes. It's not as big of a process as you had mentioned, but there is that sort of, okay, there's a whole process to this and getting all the runes for it and talking to Seer the Peer or whoever, or Peer the Seer. Who is it? Peer the Seer?
Peer the Seer, yeah.
I was like, Seer the Peer, that's not making any sense.
It's not quite right.
Yeah, I definitely get that. I kind of, when you had first initiated that, I was thinking like, okay, like what if there was you get the God Sword shards, you want to make your God Sword, and there's a full on like process of having the additional coal or other ores, and it really is a process of you sitting at a furnace or sitting somewhere for a decent amount of time to be able to process this ancient blade. It's just hard because it's like, I don't know, I want something to be fun. Like I want it to be worthwhile, not just purely like, okay, this is, because one of the things that comes to mind are those salts from My Arm's
Big Adventure, yeah.
No, not my.
No, the second one.
Making Friends with My Arm.
Yeah.
That one, like when you go to Waste and then you have this process of building these little fire pits, and one of the things they did, and I thought to its detriment, was just drastically reduce the XP you get from mining these salts. I mean, just pathetically low. It's like 5K XP an hour. But they did it because they're like, oh, well, these are going to be a good money maker because people aren't going to want to go mine these. And so the people that do can AFK it and make a profit. But then, of course, a bunch of bots flooded it and they're still worthless and they're just horrible XP. And I'm just like, why couldn't we have just made this better XP per hour and made it somewhat enjoyable to some extent? Yeah. And I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot of things where they go too far in the opposite direction to make things almost miserable so that it is a way to make money because nobody else wants to do it, but then it ends up getting botted anyway. And it's just like, it's a miserable experience for everybody now.
Yeah. No, it's certainly a hard balance. And I think maybe that just might be the design of the activity, that it was so easily bottable and simultaneously just terrible XP, but also you could get enough such that, or you know, it was accessible enough such that the things hold no value to them. I definitely think, yeah, there's probably better and worse ways that you can do it.
Yeah, I think overall, just to kind of wrap up, I guess the skilling conversation is there needs to be a full kind of like reimagination of what skilling can be. And in my opinion, it is really focusing on skill expression and focusing on making this really worthwhile, making it genuinely good GP per hour. Look at how successful PVM has become. There are reasons for that. They put so much dev time into making a super fun encounter that's challenging.
So interesting.
Yeah. And again, there could be this. I guess, you know, I keep kind of sliding back into this, but I do want to wrap it up. But like one of the things they could do is genuinely add more gear, or more equipment down the line. I mean, we have dragon equipment and then crystal. I mean, what if there was genuine equipment upgrades so that there will be some skilling that like you will do better with this super high tier equipment? It doesn't need to go extreme like we have with combat, where it's like bronze all the way to rune, all the way to whatever else. But like, let's add some new cool tools that have niche uses. Even imagine that. Imagine a pickaxe that has a more niche use. So it's not just across the board faster. It's got some other extra special attack ability or something like that that keeps things fresh.
Yeah, I really do like that idea. The only caveat I'll always put on the conversation about skilling like this is that one of the things which terrifies me about RS3 is when they go skilling, you should see their inventory. It's got like 20 different items in it. You have to bring all these different items in order to skill efficiently. And it's like, and you know, it's not like a developer just sat down one day and was like, let's just introduce all these items. It was this sort of slow scope creep where this little thing helps you skill a little bit better. Okay, now this thing helps you skill a little bit better. And this thing now, and this thing, and this thing. And just kind of kept going on to the point where it's like you're going out skilling, but you're bringing like a surgeon's like toolkit with you. It's like, you know,
that would be the wrong way to go about it.
Yeah, there is a certain appeal to skilling as it is, being simple. And this is such a difficult conversation because now we can talk about forestry. It's such a difficult conversation because it's like, how do you make skilling both more interesting, but not overcomplicated and not crazy and still feel like it's old school skilling? And this is one thing that this has always been a bit of a problem over the past decade with skilling, is that we're so careful to touch your basic generic, you know, take pickaxe, hit rock, to the point that all the skilling updates we receive, they're all these like, they're almost all derivatives of skilling. You know, Winter Toad is like this derivative of fire making. It doesn't really feel like fire making. It's something derivative. It's all these activities are like isolated to instances, they're isolated to specific little areas, they're mini games of their own. It doesn't feel like, when I say I'm going to train fire making, you probably understand that I'm going to go do Winter Toad. I'm not really going to be making fires in a way. I guess you know, you do at Winter Toad a bit, but it's like, it feels like fire making is almost defined. It's almost like Winter Toad the skill rather than a skill about making fires, because that's just what you do all the time. And one of the challenges that Jagex decided to take on some time ago was like, hey, can we take wood cutting and make it more interesting and make it integrated into the world still without, you know, and as a way to just make it more engaging and make it more rewarding. And I think that was the premise of where forestry came from, which, you know, I don't want to go into like intense detail on the issues of forestry, but I think that it really suffered from both being something that was intended to expand the core woodcutting experience to make it more interesting, as well as like a random event system. Because I think if you look at those random events, they don't really feel like woodcutting. They feel like something that could happen while woodcutting. And when you look at Forestry's release, you had like 1,000 people chopping 4 different trees in a small area and just being spammed and overwhelmed by this million things flying around. It was like I was walking to a carnival.
Yep.
Like everything's just screaming my name, trying to attract my attention, trying to get me to interact with it. Whereas now it's much, and I think that as as time has gone on, forestry is now a lot less frequent. It now feels a lot more like random events that are specific to woodcutting, which I think is like an okay place for it to sit. It's just like that's not really making woodcutting all the more engaging now, is it?
No.
It's like there's these two different premises of random events, but also make core woodcutting more interesting and more engaging that just didn't really quite match.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted my honest opinion, I really, and I'd stated this so much back on the release of Forestry, was like, man, if all they had done was really just looked at tree rates and the amount of logs you can get per hour and XP rates and rebalance those, made it so magic trees aren't completely pathetic to chop and yew trees being relatively pathetic as well. And then just made it so you are encouraged to have people chopping with you. Like as simple as that, and the timers I loved it that the trees had certain timers. So it wasn't just like, you chop one log and it's gone. All of that was great. And that's really all they needed to do, in my opinion. And then I thought on top of that, as a fun little treat, they could have like one event that can happen randomly. Something that kind of keeps you engaged, like an evil tree that spawns and it can attack you kind of, and it can spawn some little ruse that'll get you stuck or whatever else. And you got to just chop it down, basically. It's just a fun group activity to do. Not like a variety of like 18 different random fucking things where you have to use Runelight's plugin and have square tiles everywhere and run back and forth and spam. It's just, holy shit, everything. And you have to entity hide everybody because or else you just can't even do it. It's like, okay, we went way too crazy with this. And I mean,
because the basic premise of random events that are relevant to what you're doing, I think is great. I think that's a great premise. And in fact, we used to have that. You used to be fishing and a sea troll would pop up, or, a shark would take your net or whatever. Unfortunately, it was all annoying at that time. Tree spirit, like a dryad would spawn and attack you while you're wood cutting, or your tree would turn into an ent and break your axe. Like those used to be relevant to the activities that you were doing. And I feel like if Forestry just took that angle of, hey, instead of, Posty Pete coming to harass you or Molly trying to teleport you away to this alternate dimension, what if you just had like a happy tree and you chop it and it gives you an extra log? Like, just random events in place of our current random event, except relevant to woodcutting. I feel like I would have been a lot happier if we had done that. But instead we just got this mishmash between a random event system that spawned way too frequently, that also tried to make woodcutting more enjoyable or more engaging. And I just think those two premises just really didn't work with each other very well.
Yeah, and again, it's just one of those things where I have just taken a step back, and they've made obviously massive changes to it where it's not as intense, and they scrapped the second part of it, which would have been a disaster. Oh my God, thank God. But and I just try to think, I'm like, you know what? Like, some people really love forestry. They love that it's been introduced into the game, and I'm like, you know what? Like, that's fair play. Fair play. But I think I do kind of agree with you more where like I loved the simplicity, the old school nature of it. If they were to try to forestryize mining the way they did it with woodcutting, that would be a disaster and it just make me sick.
Just because it's a great time to bring it up. I had to think about this for quite some time, and I've thought about putting a video together for it. I'm not sure if I will still. But it's the idea of, okay, let me just take a look at woodcutting again. let's just kind of put forestry at the back of my mind and ask, okay, ignore the random event system. What if I were just to try and create a sort of expansion to woodcutting that still tries to feel like woodcutting, but is a little bit different? And so I want you to just watch this video here, and I want you to tell me what you think is happening, because I think that I'm just curious as to what you think
I've
is
seen this.
happening. I think you've seen a different one, but
Okay.
that is a very that is a good one I put up.
Okay, I was gonna say, that's the one you're just running around, boom, boom. Yeah, just talking about Oh yeah, I think this is the one I was seeing, unless there was something else.
No. It's different for sure.
Okay.
I definitely upped the antics in the one that I posted to Twitter, but that was kind of the start of this idea.
So let me see, because right now what I'm seeing is you're holding a clue, and for those that are just listening, there's a video of a forester just walking into a forest. He opens his clue to look, and then all of a sudden there's a little signposts next to these trees. And he's doing it, and I'm pretty sure he's going to get to the next clue step by doing that or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, let me get your take on it.
Yeah. So I only used the clue just because it was the only map-looking item that you could wield. So it's not supposed to be a clue. Let's call it like a logging map or a forester's map or something like that. Logging map sounds good. So pretty much the idea of this was that, so what's happening in the video is essentially you have your character, you're going out into the woods, and you use this logging map, and a bunch of trees are picked out for you, and your goal is to chop them. Now, one of the things that it's a bit of a note I took from fire making, which one of the few things about fire making that's kind of neat is that when you're lighting fires in a row, every fire after the first one lights very quickly. It's like the logs just catch. So you have to do this initial lighting animation on your fire, and then the next fire you create, if you're fast enough, it'll just light automatically very quickly. And so I took that same premise and thought, okay, what if I apply that to woodcutting? So you've used this map, you've marked out a couple of trees, and after you've chopped the first one, every subsequent tree you cut is just instant, essentially. And if you watch the video here, it's like there's this fun animation of the character just taking this tree down. So the idea being, okay, if you complete this sort of task, then maybe you get a chunk of woodcutting XP if you do it quickly. Maybe there's some other rare reward from doing it. What's your sort of instinct take on that?
I love this. I love this because one of the things that can be addicting in video games is comboing.
Yes.
Combos can be extremely addicting. I mean, I played Guitar Hero for years, and that was just like amazing, building these huge streaks. And we see it in even like a combat game where you can do a certain combo against an enemy. And I'm imagining, if you were to come out with a system, it wouldn't even need to necessarily be marked trees, but that would be a more interesting system for sure. Is having certain marked trees, and with Runelight, they would all be highlighted with an outline around the tree. And holy shit, I'm thinking about getting a little. It wouldn't even need to be like a contract thing. It would just be like you get a certain. Let's say you're chopping, and you get a little map piece, like you said, and now you have access. That's going to mark a bunch of different trees. And as long as you click them in a timing, you are just going to keep one ticking them. Just boom, you click the next one. No tick manipulation required. As long as you're on a queue and you're not missing a tick, as long as you keep going to the next tree and whatnot. And you just completely clear out a fucking forest. And on top of that, there could be the spontaneous tree that isn't marked initially, but as soon as you chop one, oh shit, it diverged your path right over here. If you click this one,
that's interesting.
Then you get an extra bonus. And then what you're doing is your XP keeps trickling upward. And you just, by the end, you just got this massive multiplier. Oh my, you know what it actually just reminded me of, Foley?
Yeah.
Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. When you're going on a free map and you're just fucking doing this crazy combo and you just keep building it, it is one of the most addicting things of all time.
Yeah.
And then by the end, you do a fucking Christ air like out up in the air and you just finish it all. And it's just like the biggest bonus you've ever seen in your life. And then you know what they really need to do to capture it all is not just have the default XP, but they need to go into the actual game and give you this like basically firework explosion of like just this, your dude is basically gaining turbo. I mean, I also remember playing those Midway sports games on like the GameCube, and like your dude is like firing up, he's heating up, like he's getting some fucking smoke behind him. And by the end, your dude just on fire and he's just freaking out. And oh my God, that'd be so addicting.
So there's a couple of thoughts. Like, it's interesting that you kind of in your head, you imagine that this map was something that would drop like as a random drop from a tree. I think that's kind of interesting. My initial idea was just like, no, you just go to the general store and you can use this map an infinite number of times. Logging, which I've just called this activity, logging is just an activity you can do. But it is interesting, like, oh, could you make it more of like a rare occasion? That's an interesting thought.
The only reason I think, to be fair, I actually would love this to be a repeatable thing. I think that's mainly the community sentiment too, is they don't really like the contract system. They don't like the orb system of this, I guess, in like the PVM realm. But I think there could be something more special about it being slightly more rare, in that the combos and the XP you can get really can be quite generous. If it is a rare thing.
That's true. Yeah, that's really interesting to think about. Yeah, I'll have to think about that more. The other thing is that one of the ideas behind this activity is like when you use this map, it randomly picks out these different trees so that like every time you use it, the setup is different. Your path that you can choose is different. So like the mechanical skill in this would probably not be very high, but there'd be like a bit of cognitive skill in that like you have to pick out a good path to do this efficiently. And that's where I'm going to get into the next video. And I just wanted to see what you think of this extension to the idea.
So for those not watching it, it's pretty similar, but oh my God, you just one-ticked a magic tree. That was insane. Oh, okay. That ending was clutch. So it's very, very similar. The man's running, doing the one ticking trees, running around. And then there's a clump of 3 evergreen trees. And he, with one stroke, chops all 3 down with one big side swipe. That was fucking awesome.
Yeah. So the idea is that if you're in this state of flow, in this state of momentum, you've been clicking trees quickly enough, maybe like at level, say, 60 wood cutting, you unlock the ability to just, if you're in the state of momentum and there's a bunch of trees beside you, you just sweep all of them. You don't have to do anything special. Like, it's not like a special attack. You just cut them down.
As long as you're adjacent, assuming.
As long as you're adjacent.
Yep.
And you'll also notice when he cuts the magic tree, he actually cuts the tree behind it as well, which is the other idea, which is like, if I don't know, if you're 70 wood cutting, you can, you domino these trees if there's 2 in a row. So yeah, that was, again, going back into the sort of like, not so much mechanical skill, but more cognitive skill. When you press this map, a bunch of trees are randomly chosen, and you got to optimize your path in the moment to figure out, okay, how can I do this quickly enough? How can I line up these trees so I cut 2 in a row? How do I get into this little nook and cranny between these 3 trees so I can sweep them all at the same time?
It's genius. It's genius. And I think to really optimize something like this, because all I'm thinking about right now is just behind Lumbridge Castle. I mean, there's so many fucking trees, and you could just...
Yes.
But one of the things that I think would be so important is to even do a little bit of map re-editing. Have somebody go in and really find some amazing triple spots and even quadruple spots. And even if it's based on diagonals, you could even have like a fucking quintuple spot where, I mean, you could just go into this
drain your matter.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, and I think like organically right now, the map is just not built for this. You could still have some really great combos and everything with how the world is, but assuming this goes into the game, maybe having a little bit of, okay, we're gonna touch it up a little bit, make it a little bit more free, and make it so you don't get trapped behind certain rocks and whatever else.
Yeah.
Could
So
be
one of my
incredible.
ideas, I think that would be really useful to have. One of my ideas was also like, obviously he one ticks the magic tree in this. That's probably not a good thing if you are playing with other players and one ticking their magic trees.
No, it is. That's a good
No,
thing.
no, no.
That would be hilarious.
Yeah.
No.
Rather, I would probably make it such that like you perform this animation and the magic tree shakes as it hits really hard and you're given a magic log and then you can just move on to the next tree, right? So like that's one thing. The other thing is that I suspect it would probably be best if like first off, you can obviously only chop trees that you have the level for. But if you include a higher level tree, then there's a chance for a better reward. So a rare chance for like a magic branch or magic leaves or whatever. So long as you have like one magic tree in that little logging task that you've created, just to again kind of encourage you to, well, you still want to chop like roughly around high level trees, and also make it so that like you can possibly give some really good rewards that are relevant to that tree.
I think even beyond it, this is a great opportunity to add a more advanced infernal axe, something that is actually lighting trees on fire that'll start burning it.
That would be super cool. The only thing, one of the things that I was very cognizant of, again, in the context of forestry and how like loud and how many bright animations and glowing circles, is to like just try and make it subtle and immersive again. So if you saw that clip I posted to Twitter of like essentially the basic component of this activity, like my character's like doing AGS specs and like lighting a tree on fire. Like I intentionally made it goofy, but I do think that if you were to introduce it into the game and you're going to say this is like an expansion to core woodcutting, you want to make it kind of subtle, kind of immersive. The most I've done here is given you like a halberd special attack or like a dragon axe special attack animation. Like I haven't really done much crazy beyond that.
Yeah, no, there is just so much potential for something like this. Like, see, this
Can I show
is
you
where.
one more?
Yeah, what? Did you say you had one more thing to show?
One more video.
Let's see it.
Just then I'll let you complete your thought.
Okay. Just love it. It's just logging part 3.
Yeah.
It's just so satisfying. This is all just so satisfying. Okay, that was dope. Fucking throwing axes. This man is okay. This has,
so what happens? Yeah, so just to describe it to the viewer. So what happens in the video? It's the same thing. He starts off this sort of logging cycle, gets into momentum by chopping the first tree. He's going from tree to tree, one ticking them. He does like essentially a halberd special attack to swipe a couple trees closer together, and near the end, he uses a thrown axe to hit a tree that's like way far away.
That is just so cool. I'm rewatching it again. It's just so genius. See, that would be one of the rewards, is like boomerang axes, one that you can chuck and it comes back to you, something like that. And it's just genius because this is exactly what you would need. It's something that's simplistic, it's rhythmic, it's engaging. You can't AFK this. Like, you have to be engaged, but it's not a headache to do. It's just satisfaction the whole way. And yeah, this is just genius, man.
This is one of the reasons why I wanted to make Creators Kit, is that I could see people do crazier stuff like make activities like this. And I do hope that people do get to do it. But yeah, I mean, I was, again, the inspiration, I was kind of self-inspired in a way by making that tweet where I was like, man, that's really satisfying, just one tick trees. Why can't we do that again?
Yeah, it's the same thing I want with mining. We have so many rocks across the world that nobody will ever touch because it's fucking useless. It's not close to a bank. Imagine the same sort of thing where you're near Port Khazard, that area, and there's a little mining section right east of Yanil. And imagine you just pull out your little contract or whatever it is, and then all of a sudden it just points all the rocks you can do. And in fact, it would be something, maybe it almost like seemingly opening that contract kind of causes a sort of instance. It's like you're not actually in an area instance, but the rocks all become this kind of magical instance where every single one of them needs to be mined now, and you got to find the most optimal route. And you can one tick them. Just boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
Bro, this would just be exactly... This would be so addicting. It would be so addicting to do.
So again, this is kind of, again, me taking the idea of forestry and saying, like, can I make something that still feels like wood cutting? The entire time I want to be cutting wood, but make it more interesting without being super flashy, without sort of getting in your face, without disrupting other players. And just one of the small things is like, I don't know, just to get to see other people wood cutting around the world again, rather than all being conglomerated around two trees.
Totally right. You're totally right. This is genius.
And the nice thing is that, like, if you do it as I laid out, where you like essentially have this contract, you finish the contract, and maybe you get maybe at the end you get some sort of rare drop, or you roll for some sort of rare drop, dependent on, maybe if there is a magic tree in the contract that you cut. I think that's just also a decent way to be able to provide some valuable rewards back to woodcutting. What those rewards would be, I have no idea at this point, though.
Yeah. I mean, one of them just simply could just be logs. I mean, you just like literally getting a decent amount of logs. There's so many PVM sources that you just get shit tons of noted logs.
Yeah, that's true. Like just make it good at cutting wood again.
Yeah, seriously. But again, I mean, there's so many cool things you could do with that. And even simple things as more cosmetics for your woodcutting outfit or for your axes or whatever else. Even cosmetics is enough. But yeah, really, really cool. That's genius. I love hearing that. That was a really brilliant idea. I haven't heard anything like that cool. And because you made the visual of it. So you're not just trying to explain it. That's the problem with me is like, I wouldn't do this to you because you're so busy, IRL. I'd have to clearly pay you for a job like this. But I've repeatedly been wanting some sort of ninja warrior agility thing that really is rhythm based. It's like you're going across an obstacle. You got to click boom, 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 boom. You got to one tick this obstacle.
The Yama rocks.
Yeah, exactly. And then the next one, but the Yama rocks don't even fully do it justice. I mean, that's amazing because they've made the animation so satisfying too. So jumping, it feels good. But you could even have one where it's like, you got to jump one tick, two tick, one tick, two tick. And if you slip up, you'll slip up. But you're going to get that just amazing animations that just make you feel when you do it perfectly, it feels good. And then you get the animation stall when you're running to the next place. You do just fucking zip lines to the next.
Yeah.
Like, oh, there's so much cool potential. And it all revolves around quick, predictable resource extraction, zippy, no stickiness, rhythm. It's all that. We need to focus on it more, in my opinion. So
yeah, giving you like a really good sense of flow and momentum. I think that's really key.
Yeah, and those combos, just like the comboing, just can feel incredible. So yeah, totally. Well, let me ask you, Gnome, before we wrap things up, what haven't we touched on that you think you might want to say?
Oh man, you could probably go at it forever. But I think that's probably most of what I wanted to bring to the table today. Yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with that, if you are.
I am. This was amazing. Almost 4 hours, and it feels like
good.
It feels like we just started, honestly. So
yeah.
Gnome, you're a great person to have in the community. You're just Creator's Kit alone is just such a valuable resource. And you've just, I don't know, your inspiration with sailing, I know you've had a huge impact on that, and you remind me of Gentle Tractor. You and him, I swear, you have like the same auras. It's just like, it's great. You guys are so passionate about the game, genuinely bringing up brilliant ideas that haven't been thought up, and on top of that, you guys are just hella creative and articulate. So thank you for coming on, man. This is great.
Thank you so much. I mean, I really appreciate you inviting me to this all those years ago now. And I think you do a great job with the cast. I think you're a great interviewer. So thank you very much for having me on, of course.
No, it really is my pleasure. So after the call, I will ask for all your links. So if you have anything you want me to throw down in the description, I'll have it all down there. So for those listening, go check him out on his links below. If you guys want to support the cast, there's a Patreon link, YouTube membership, and Spotify subscription link where you can access exclusive episodes. And speaking of exclusive episodes, we're going to be having one on Sunday. So stay tuned for that.
Ooh.
It's been a couple months and a half at this point since the last one. So stay tuned for all those that are currently subscribed. I appreciate you guys' support. And Gnome, that is it for me. So thank you so much for coming on, and thank you everybody for listening. We'll catch you guys in the next one.
Like and subscribe.
Hell yeah.